I'm joined tonight by Ryan Nichols, a January 6th defendant, a Marine Corps veteran, and a Texas resident who is currently running for office, actually. I spent nearly 2 years behind bars with Ryan, and I'm happy to have him here today to tell his story about who he really is, his story about what January 6th was actually about, what he witnessed, what he experienced, and what his time as a political prisoner has been like, and really his path through that to now freedom, being pardoned, and being an American once again. So with that, thank you for being with me, Ryan.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing this. I guess we'll start from the beginning. Who is Ryan Nichols? Who was he before January 6th? If you could give us your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Tim. So a little bit about me. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, business owner here in Longview, Texas. I own a wholesale and a retail company. We have anywhere between 50 to 75 employees, nation and worldwide. The majority of them being here in the nation. And I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have 2 kids, and I've been married for over 10 years. And I'm a search and rescue specialist. I've worked hurricanes, tornadoes, missing victims, missing persons, and worked with local law enforcement and law enforcement all over the United States leading up to January 6th. And, leading up to January 6th with COVID and everything that was going on with the election, with stuff that was happening overseas, mail-in ballots, I really just, got involved politically and saw what was going on. And then when Trump said, be there, I was like, you're damn right, I'm going to be there. And so that's, who I was leading up to January 6th.
All right. Funny. It's funny. I remember being in one of the cells adjacent to you and hearing your nickname was Retail Ryan. They had me dying. And one of the first things I did when I got out of prison is I tried to find your old commercials, and they are quite hilarious. If anybody hasn't seen them, they should look them up. Retail Ryan. It's quite.
And so the first one, I remember telling you about that. And when I got back, I actually just started working at the company again the other day. And I found my first plaque that was given to me when I left the Marine Corps, and it says, to Ryan eBay Nichols. I'll make sure I get a picture and send that to you, because I've been doing that since I got out of the Marines. And so, that's just part of my lifestyle. So I'm glad that we got to talk about that. And then, I got to get out and actually do that again. And so you can see that it's cool that we were able to talk about things and actually go do them.
Yeah, it's funny, And, one of the conversations, actually, to skip ahead a little bit, we'll get back. But I remember us having one of our vent talks or whatever. And one of I guess it was one of the units above us.
Let's tell people what that was real quick. Let's just get off into that. What was vent talk, Tim? I'm going to interview you just like you're going to interview me. This is going to be fun today. Let's tell people what was vent talk.
Yeah, vent talk. When we were in the DC jail, it's interesting because you're isolated alone in your own cell, but you'd have vents that connected the cell next to you. Not both cells, so you would have a cell to your left and a cell to your right. At least one of those cells would be connected to you by a vent and you could talk to one another. But then the units directly above you and the cells above you would also connect. So you could have up to 4 people in a conversation, even more if there were people in a separate unit. We had 2 tiers in the unit we were held in, C2B, but there were other floors above us. And so every now and then we would get some, I guess, onlookers is one way to put it. You would just get some interesting people that would just randomly pop up. And you couldn't be sure if you could trust them or who they were, but it was always interesting. And there was one.
And I think at one point we were convinced that they were listening to us and recording us in the vents. And I'm sure some of that was paranoia, but I'm sure some of that actually did happen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But, it was probably a mixture of both. But I do think a lot of it was just organic. And so people would overhear us because we're in solitary, unlike everyone else. And so we have nothing else to do but yell random crazy stuff through the vents. And there was this time that I remember you actually offered work to a couple of people who were talking through the vents to us, not in our unit, just random people, locals, I guess, in DC. And you actually offered them, the ability to do exactly what you're doing. I don't know if they ever followed up with you on that. It was
so a funny story about that. They did, and so my staff up there, every time somebody reached out, they would write down who it was, when they reached out, and so I have a track record of people reaching out. From all the way when I was arrested over here, went through Grady County in Oklahoma, to guys in DC, and then later on in the BOP that reached out when I would talk to them about business. And so I remember who you were talking about that night. I remember yelling up to them through the vent. And yes, they actually did reach out to my staff, and didn't buy anything, but did get the training that we talked about. So yeah, like it was cool to be able to speak to people through the vent and help them in ways, whether it was talking to them about my business, or whether we would go outside and talk to people about the grievance process, through the windows. Like we were talking to somebody and trying to help people.
So in terms of assisting others or giving back to the community or providing opportunity, you had mentioned that you were involved in search and rescue. Could you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, so I did search and rescue. My search and rescue really started when I was a freshman in high school. It was either 8th grade. I was in 8th grade or a freshman in high school, and Hurricane Katrina came through New Orleans, Louisiana, and Biloxi, Mississippi. And so we went out there the day after, two days after Hurricane Katrina rolled through. We went down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I was a freshman in high school, 14 years old, and that was the first time that I had ever went down there to a disaster zone, and we picked people up that were completely homeless, lost everything. Family members had died. They just watched destruction, and transported them to Dallas. And I remember when we got up to Dallas, there is a building that looks like the New Year's Eve ball. I forgot what this building's called, but it's a big round ball where you can go up there and eat. They had never seen anything like this. They had never been out in New Orleans. They thought it was the New Year's Eve ball, and I remember helping these people and watching them, the life come back to their eyes. And that was as a freshman in high school. And I started doing hurricane search and rescue after that. When I got out of the Marines, when I was in the Marines overseas in Okinawa, Japan, we dealt with 4 typhoons, including Super Typhoon Jelawat, which is famous for throwing the car across the barracks parking lot over in Okinawa, Japan. I was there for that one. I didn't film that, but I was in the barracks that watched that happen. And so I worked 4 typhoons overseas, and then got back home after the Marine Corps, and then started a business, and then Hurricane Harvey happened. And that's what really pushed me into hurricane search and rescue. I had just moved out of Houston 3 days before Hurricane Harvey, and my entire business was still down there. And I remember calling my staff the morning that it hit, and I was like, hey, are y'all okay? And I couldn't get a hold of everybody. And so my leadership was telling me, like, hey, we got people that, the water's rising down here, Ryan. We can't get a hold of them. So I came down there immediately, drove from Dallas down to Houston, picked up one of my buddies. We went and bought a boat at Academy Sports and Outdoors, and started doing rescues. And really all that was me trying to find my employees and make sure they were all safe. And what started as me trying to find my employees turned into a 4-day rescue mission of pulling as many people out of the water in Houston, Texas as we could. And we wound up rescuing quite a few people, getting national attention, raising around $40,000, helping a lot of the victims down there. And that just, rebirthed life into me after the Marines. I was like looking for a direction. I was looking for purpose. And I had a business and I had a family, but I wanted to do something that really, really mattered. And jumping back into hurricane search and rescue and saving somebody's life, I'd never felt as exhilarating and as fulfilled as I did when I pulled that first person out of the water and saved their life. And so I got, I guess you could say, addicted to it, really. A storm would come in, and I know somebody's going to die. Am I going to put myself in a position to save their life? And I started doing that, and I started attracting people that wanted to do it, and I built a rescue team, and we went out all over the nation and started doing that for the following 3 to 4 years, and I did that all the way until January 6th happened.
Well, another form of, I suppose, public service really was, of course, you had mentioned your military service in the Marines. And you had also mentioned that, part of going to D.C., you had heard from Trump to be there. So connecting these two things, what was, I suppose, your political outlook? Were you really politically engaged, or did you feel just because of the election you had a motivation to be in D.C.? If you could, what was your worldview in the build-up?
That's a great question right there. So, I'm a huge Trump supporter, always been a Trump supporter. I've been a Trump supporter since he walked down the golden escalator in 2015. And, I'd never, because of my business, I always had a rule that I was never going to speak publicly about politics online because I didn't want people to take into my business and to start wearing me out because of my political beliefs. And so for a long, long time, I was a closet conservative, a closet Trump supporter, somebody that would talk about being a Trump supporter around my friends or, behind closed doors, but I'm not bringing up politics in public. And so during that time, as you know, and I'm glad that you kind of circle back around to it because it refreshes me on why we're talking about this. During this time of me not talking about this, but Trump being the president, me owning a business, doing hurricane search and rescue, I'm also being entrapped by federal agents. And unknowingly, there are people like Marcus DiPiola or 1% Watchdog, which I still don't know this man's name. The government does. But they're working with me doing hurricane search and rescue, and I don't realize that these are federal agents. And all I know is that we're working together doing hurricane search and rescues. Every time something comes up, they're like, hey, how can we help? How can we assist? Where are you going to be? Be here, do this, do that. And we're there. And it's not just me. There's dozens of other people that were at these storms and involved with these people, whether it be with hurricanes or whether it be with wildfires or whether it be, some local type of storm, flash flooding, it didn't matter. Marcus would be there, 1% would be there. Marcus would be filming, 1% would be leading things, and there would be teams like myself that would go in and help, and we would all link up with each other and help. And so while I was doing hurricane search and rescue and working with these people and not talking about President Trump and not talking about, politics, I'm being entrapped and groomed at the same time in a honeypot scheme for people that are rescuers. And I found case law to back this up. I think we talked about that. But that's what was really going on, leading up to 2020. We get into the election season, and I start seeing all election season leading up, you hear President Trump talking about we can't have mail-in ballots. This is what's, COVID is leading to mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots is going to lead to a stolen election, and a stolen election is going to lead to all these other bad things. And so it's one thing to hear somebody say that, but it's another thing to see what a man says months and months prior start coming out to be true, like clockwork. So I start following these things, and one thing that I like following is data and evidence. And if the data and the evidence points that direction, even if I don't like that answer, I have to accept that and start moving in that direction. And so I started seeing things that made me move out of my comfort zone and all of a sudden start posting politically online. I started realizing that what's happening to our country and what I'm seeing, the patterns that I'm seeing, I can't worry about what somebody's going to say online about my business or leave me a negative review. This is about more than my business, This is about the future of the United States of America. This is about my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren that I may never meet. And so when I started realizing these things and putting them together and seeing where we were headed, I started posting politically. And when I started posting politically, that's when I noticed, things started changing. People that I had known online or known for years started saying different things, and that's where we get into Marcus. Marcus starts really becoming politically engaged with me, asking questions. Next thing I know, people are reaching out to me online, wanting to comment from a search and rescue specialist, and they're from these leftist-leaning organizations. BuzzFeed, I think, was one of them. There's just some of them are not even around anymore. Some of these media companies, these left-leaning media companies, but they would reach out, and I didn't know any better. I'm just like, okay, cool, I'll give you an interview because I'm thinking it's just going to help me get seen, not knowing that these people are working together in even in like backroom networks and talking to each other and saying, hey, I've got this guy, do this, do that, get them on an interview. And I didn't think that way until I saw the evidence, until I saw the black and white, until I started seeing the paperwork where you've got this person mixed in writing a statement and this person mixed in writing a statement. I'm like, oh my God, these people, what I thought, they didn't even talk to each other or know each other, but their statements and their work is kind of overlapping each other. And so
it was a concerted effort.
Yeah, and it's almost concerted into the point to where it looks like now that this is too what's the word? There's too many hands in this, And so it almost seems like when you look at it, you kind of feel crazy because you're like, there's no way that somebody could pull this off. This isn't easy by any means.
It's not organic.
All. Yeah, it's very complex is what I'm looking for. It's like a very intricate, complex network, and it's just very complex. And so, yeah, I started posting politically, and 2020 was a crazy time period. I got off my medications. I was doing hurricane search and rescue. I was dealing with the trauma of dealing with a lot of death. 2020 was a very hard hurricane season too. I don't know if you remember that, but we got into the Greek alphabet that year, and that's when they started having like alpha. What was it? Beta, gamma. Like there was delta. There was all sorts of hurricanes that year, to the point to like the last hurricane of the season. I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't do it. The last one I was able to do was Hurricane Sally, and in Alabama, and that was it for me. We almost capsized a boat doing rescues that morning with a baby inside of it, and the rescue had to get done. The baby had to get out of the house. The house was flooding, and we were one of the only boats to do it, but it still almost capsized and killed some people. And after that rescue, I didn't do no more rescues after that. I did rescues the rest of that day because I had to. We did one more rescue that day where another gentleman either died or was about to die. His cousin had just died. And so when we got done with rescues that day, I told Alex, so we going home. And he went and helped after that, but I couldn't do no more rescues after that. That was it for me.
You'd mentioned Alex. This is your co-defendant, Alex Harkrider, correct?
That's correct, Alex Harkrider.
Okay. Well, on that note, so you've got all this going on, a lot of chaos really in the build up to January 6th. Basically, it seems like society is being really kept under a boot with the COVID. You see a lot of inconsistencies with the election. There's this plot going on behind the scenes with these malicious actors who are basically creating a frame job about you. And Meanwhile, you're doing all this to help people who are in disasters. You're a veteran. Um, you feel a sense of public duty. You go to Washington, D.C. for January 6th. If you could, what was the ultimate motivation to go to Washington, D.C.? And after that, I'd like to go really through your whole day of January 6th from start to finish.
Absolutely. So I remember sitting up in Oklahoma in the middle of December when the tweet and post on Facebook came through, be there on January 6th, we'll be wild. And I was like, well, shit, if this is President Trump's last time to speak, or if he's going to present election fraud evidence, I want to be there to see it. And so everybody started hyping it up, and so people started making it a thing immediately. And so I'm like, okay, there's no hurricanes. It's December. I just got done chasing all these things. What am I going to do? Well, let me go see what this is about. So I start making plans and saying that I'm going to come up there and see it and watch what's going on. But, as I start doing that, I start getting people reach out to me like, Marcus, and he's like, where are you going to be? What you going to be doing that day? And I say, look, this is what we're doing. Trump said be there. We're going to plan on coming up and watching, the speaker speak and do this. And he was like, well, just to let you know, that day is just a formality. There's nothing that can happen. Nothing is going to happen. But are you going to bring body armor? There's probably going to be some counter protesters. And so I started with him, and I was like, well, look, Marcus, I don't agree with that. I want to be there to hear what the president has to say. If he says that there's something that can be done, it can be done. And so he just vastly wanted to argue with me that nothing could be done, but you need to make sure to be careful. Then he says, where are you going that day? Are you going to listen to Trump speak, or are you going to the Capitol? So that was the first time that the Capitol got introduced to me. And he started telling me about speakers that were going to be there at the Capitol. And so I told him that I planned on going to the Ellipse, and we actually had a sign up that we signed up for I think it's like Women for Trump, that were at the Ellipse, and that's what we had signed up for. And so I took heed for what he said about counter-protesters, and for what he said about asking if I'm bringing body armor. And I know that he'd been to protests before. He'd been to Ferguson, Missouri. He'd been to a lot of other places, and he'd also been out there doing hurricanes with us, helped me get on the Ellen DeGeneres show, so I trusted this guy. So if he's like, hey, you might need to bring body armor, I'm like, okay, fuck, I better bring some body armor then. And so I had just watched protests happen all summer. MAGA protesters get stabbed in the chest, people getting killed at these protests. And so Alex and I both decided that we were going to bring body armor. And we were going to bring one plate, one for my chest and one for his chest. And so we didn't have the body armor at first. And so one of the things we were going to do is we were going to go up through Kentucky, and there was a body armor place up there, a military place where we could go up there and get the body armor. And so we were doing this because we were working in conjunction with Operation Underground Railroad. We were doing anti-human trafficking, and we had training events supposed to be later on at the end of January and at the beginning of February, and we were going to go into the tunnels of Las Vegas and Dallas and other places, and we were doing extractions and getting kids out of the tunnels. And so we were told already to go get body armor and have all these things ready. And it just so happens that we were going to go to January 6th. We would stop by Kentucky, grab the body armor, use it there so we didn't get killed, come back, and then use it in the Las Vegas tunnels with Operation Underground Railroad. Well, that didn't happen. We didn't go up through Kentucky. We planned on it. But one of my buddies around here said, hey, I have 2 plates, and I'll just give you the 2 plates if you need it. And I was like, that's perfect. It saves us from going to Kentucky. And so Alex had a plate of body armor. I had a plate of body armor. And that was just specifically so we didn't get stabbed in the chest in case, or shot in the chest if Antifa was out there fighting. And so, I hear that from Marcus, and then, I just start seeing everything online. And then around January 1st, January 2nd, December 31st time frame, I start thinking like, hey, we're about to go to DC here in the next couple of days. Alex and I plan on leaving on the 4th. And so I started thinking, what if I get on Zello? Because I had been on Zello for all these hurricanes, and the Zello app is how I know, like, when we come into an area, like, where to be, where to stay. People are always talking about anything that's going on. They talked about it on the Zello app. And so, like, if you had something big going on, you could talk about it on the Zello app. If there was a wreck, you could get on to, like, I-20 or, 295 or whatever it is, and there would be things about wrecks and weather or hurricanes or disaster. And this is where a lot of people would get in there and talk. Well, they started having them for January 6th as well. And so I started listening to these groups, and then I started getting added into other groups by 1% Watchdog, the same guy that I had been working hurricanes with for the last couple of years before this. And so this guy, 1% Watchdog, was the one that sent me on the rescues that got me on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And so I trusted this guy, even though I hadn't met him before. I trusted him because we had worked for years in life and death situations. He had sent me into life and death situations, given me good intel, and kept me alive. And so I had no reason not to trust this guy with what I knew then. Now, what I know now, you start giving me resources like that, I start realizing that, hey, you're a vet. Like you don't come up with resources like that as a normal civilian.
It's worth noting as well that this 1% Watchdog guy is also connected to chats that Jessica Watkins, one of the Oath Keepers, was caught up with.
So that's the same chat that I was in. And so Jess and I were in the same chat, the Stop the Steal J6 Zello chat. And I didn't know this until after I got into the DC jail, and I started seeing articles, and then after like 7 months, 8 months, our discovery started coming out, and slowly, little at a time, and I would hear Stop the Steal J6, or Jess was in this Zello chat, and I started like questioning, because I'm like, well, shit, I was in a Stop the Steal J6 Zello chat too. But I didn't want to say too much because I'm like, these people are getting hit with seditious conspiracy. I'm not trying to like make that connection right there.
Right.
Now, the feds already made that connection. They already knew that. And that left me wondering for a long time after I realized that they knew it, why they didn't try to connect us. And I've got some theories on that. But yes, I was in that same Stop the Steal J6 Zello chat with 1% Watchdog in it that Jess was. And I just think I have some theories about that, but we'll have to talk about that in a little while, like when we get to that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly, what was going on in my head. I'm like, I've got to go to DC. I've got to hear what President Trump has to say. These people have stolen the election. He has presented what I thought was proof at that point to come hear what he had to say. And I still believe it, especially after I watched the 2024 election. You just can't convince me otherwise that it wasn't stolen. And so, we went to DC, and as soon as we got to DC, and we didn't even drive into DC. We stopped in Virginia. I brought a truck full of guns and ammo. I thought the Insurrection Act was going to be signed. I'll be the first one to say that I was on board with thinking that Mike Lindell was coming outside of the White House and showing pictures of the paper that said Insurrection Act, and Trump posted about the Insurrection Act on Facebook and everything. And I'm thinking it's about to go down, and so everybody's talking about that online. And so I bring a truck full of guns. It's a pistol and a rifle, and Alex had a shotgun and a pistol. And really that's standard for what Texas boys carry around. I carry that around here all the time anyways. But we carried that up there, and The reason that we carried that is because everything that we saw online pointing towards a possible quote-unquote insurrection act being signed. But I also had 1% watchdog telling us, yes, you can transport weapons to D.C. If you transport weapons to D.C., this is how you do it. Here's the laws on transporting. And so they would start sending through these Zello chats like, hey, Antifa's probably going to be here. Antifa's probably going to attack. You might want to have something to defend yourself and defend others. The Insurrection Act might get signed. If the Insurrection Act gets signed and Antifa's out there, we may need your help clearing these streets because the military can't deal with all these people. So, there were people up there that, like myself, they were like, okay, if we're called, we will answer that call. So I built out a gun case that I could put inside of my truck where I could lock it, and I put the ammo in the back in a different case and locked it. And because I looked up the laws on transporting, I was like, if you're going to transport weapons, what does that look like? If you're going to transport ammo, what does that look like? And so I put it together and went and found the laws, and I did it legally. And so that way there was nothing that could be said. Guns were in the truck, locked up in a box. Ammo was in the back, locked up separately. And when we got to Virginia, we drove through all red states that allowed for weapons to be drove through them. And when we got close to D.C., we actually looked up the laws, because then I started getting nervous, and so did Alex. And we're like, I don't think that we can carry this shit into D.C. I think somebody might have told us the wrong thing. And so thankfully, our military instincts and just good citizen instincts kicked in by the time that we got close to Washington, D.C. And we're like, we're not driving into D.C. We're parking at a hotel in Virginia, and we're going to Uber into D.C. And so we did. We parked at a hotel in Virginia, and that truck never moved until we left to go home. And we can prove that with Uber records. We proved that with video camera and surveillance from the hotel, and I believe that is there's a couple things that I believe saved us that day from not getting into more trouble, and I believe parking that truck and not moving it when we can prove what we had inside of it is another thing that saved us from getting bigger charges put on us.
It's interesting. You had a similar thing again with the Oath Keepers, where they kept a quote-unquote cache of weapons out of the District of Columbia.
Correct.
And there's a whole story there, but it's funny that the focus is always on weapons that were never used. It's almost as if they're mad that everybody didn't go through with.
That's what I think too. They're mad that we thought for ourselves, that we looked up the law, and that even though federal agents or assets or sources, whatever you want to call, Cash Patel or Dan Bongino or Marcus DiPiolo want to call themselves. Thankfully, we didn't listen to these confidential human sources. We thought for ourselves. We looked at the law. We said, wait a second, you can't do that. And we're not going to do that. So, yeah, you're right. They planned for something bigger to happen, and they hoped that we would just blindly go along with it. But, yeah, the same thing that happened to the Oath Keepers happened to me and Alex. And thankfully, just like them, those weapons never made it into D.C. They stayed locked up in the truck. And, we did everything legally, though it was still used against us.
So you move to you move through the country in preparation for the big day. Take me through the day, I suppose. So did you end up kind of just hanging out the night before? Did you show up early in the morning that day? Did you go to Trump's speech?
We left on the 4th. We drove all through the night. I think we stopped for like 2 or 3 hours somewhere at a rest station, and then woke up and kept driving. We got there on the evening of the 5th and into Virginia, parked the truck, and we decided that we were going to do what we do with every hurricane. Excuse me. When we go into a location, we always like to go see where we're going to stage at. And so we've done the same thing with hurricanes. If you go back and look at all of our videos and our content for the years prior to that, the same scenario played out. We go search where we're going to be the next day, go look around, take some pictures and videos, and then we'll come back the next day. Well, So that's what we started and decided to do. We're like, let's go down to the White House. He'd never been to D.C. before. I'd never been to D.C. before. So it's like, let's go look at the White House, see the Washington Monument, take some pictures, know where we're going to be. Then we'll come back. We'll come back to the hotel. So we get in an Uber and we drive down to Washington D.C. and we get to the White House and we start taking pictures. And we're out front where we would be the next morning, and there's not that many people out there. And it was just surreal. I'm like, man, I've seen this in movies, and you couldn't really see the White House because they had the barriers up, but you still could make it out if you got like on a hill and held your phone up and took the angle the right way. And we're like, this is really cool. So we took pictures of the White House. Me and him took pictures together looking at the Washington Monument. And we're like, let's walk around to the back. So then we start walking around the side street. We start hearing this chanting. And at first, I thought it was Antifa coming up the street, and I started to go live on my phone, and I said, Antifa's coming, and then I noticed it wasn't Antifa. This looked like the Proud Boys and a whole bunch of other people carrying American flags and chanting "fuck Antifa." And so I'm like, okay, I know who this is. And so I started recording, and I was like, Alex, you wanna join them? I want to record this. I want to get the content. And so he's like, yeah. So I turned and started recording, and we started walking with the crowd, and the crowd started going back behind the White House, and we started recording and walking with them. And that crowd went from walking to walking fast, and then walking fast to jogging, and jogging to running, and realized that they had run through a police barricade, and there was an Antifa rally, a Black Lives Matter rally right behind the White House, and that's where all these guys are wanting to get to. And so they ran as fast as they could. They broke through the police barriers, and I'm filming this, and then they get up next to the BLM rally that night, and they start protesting and going at each other. Police start spraying protesters. People start getting tackled to the ground, and then they call an unlawful assembly and a riot back there. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is the first time that I've ever been to a protest before. And it's right behind the White House. It's broken out into a riot. Antifa and the Proud Boys are basically fighting each other back there. And so that's how it went for a couple hours that night until around 10 p.m. And we knew, like, hey, we got to walk a couple blocks. We got to get in an Uber. We got to drive out of here, get to the hotel, get some sleep, and still wake up and get back. So we decided to leave. And we went back to the hotel that night and then woke up at 7 a.m. the next morning, 7 or 8 a.m. We were already RSVP'd, for the Ellipse area. And then got an Uber, got back down towards the Ellipse, and just saw everybody start walking in. And it was a good, a great day. Like, the atmosphere was great that morning. People were happy, and really it was like you were kind of wondering, like, what's going to happen, because you always get to the moment of truth. The moment of truth. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? So I think that's what everybody was focused on that day, is what is actually going to happen? What is Trump going to reveal today that's going to be life-changing to us, or is it a big nothing burger? And I can't be the only person that was thinking that, that day is this something real, or is it just nothing? And so we got in the crowd and started listening to the entire speech. And we get down to the end, and Trump says, march down to the Capitol peacefully and make your voices heard. And we get off. He gets off. People start heading down there, and I remember that Alex, we had these chest plates on, and had been standing there for a couple hours. So Alex is already tired. I'm tired. Alex is tired. And he's like, I got to use the restroom and sit down for a couple minutes and take a breather. So he sits down. He uses the restroom. There's only a couple porta potties, and he sits down on the bench, and people start walking and leaving. And the crowd is just so thick that we're just like, I'm not walking down there right now. And so we wait about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and then decide, okay, the crowd still, it was crazy how many people there were still trying to move down there. And so we finally got in, and the phone started working again. And I remember as soon as the phone started working, I turned my live video on, and Well, I started running my mouth in. I started talking all sorts of shit. And eventually got to where we were halfway down to the Capitol, and the word started spreading through the crowd that Pence has certified the election, and there's nothing that we can do. It's over. And I remember the crowd starts getting pissed off, upset, and so did I. And that's where the famous, if Pence, I'm hearing that Pence caved. If he did, we're going to drag motherfuckers through the streets. Now, I didn't think, I'm sitting there talking shit. I've talked a lot of shit online before, and I've talked a lot of shit offline before. I didn't know that when we got down there, there was literally going to be hand-to-hand combat going on. I'm just talking shit at this point, It's like somebody saying, you said it good, I'm going to smack the shit out of you, and then that person says it again and smacks you instead, and you're just like, what the hell just happened? And that's kind of what it was. Like, I'm sitting there just running my mouth like, yeah, if Pence did this, we're dragging, and we get down there, and the closer we get, I start hearing explosions. And then I start smelling pepper spray. I know what pepper spray smells like. I took an OC spray course in the Marine Corps and had to go through it for a couple of days. Like, I know what it smells like. And so, as I'm sure everybody else does too, we started getting closer. I started hearing explosions. And I believe I'm still on live video at this time. And I say, Alex, you hear that? And he said, yeah, that sounded like a concussion grenade, a flashbang. And we hear another one, boom, boom. And that's when I was like, okay, it's time to get off the video. And I don't think I told anybody on the video what I was hearing, because it took me off guard too. I was like, I cannot believe I'm hearing explosions. And so I get off my live video, and we get we get close to the Capitol. I have to pee. I didn't pee in the porta potty because I thought there would be porta potties down there. So I'm one of the assholes that went in the little grassy area before you got there and peed on one of the walls in the corner, and so I didn't want to pee in front of everybody. Couldn't go into a building, they wouldn't let us in. I got to pee, I'm not peeing my pants, so pee in the corner. Alex did as well. And we're like, all right, you ready to go in? And so we started walking across the lawn. Well, by the time we got to the Capitol, the whole lawn is filled up with people. There's no restricted signs. There's nothing telling us that we can't be there. It's just the whole lawn is filled up with people. And we just walk in and start walking on. And so we start walking on, getting close to the Capitol. We're taking pictures. And it took a while to start to navigate through everybody. And so by the time I walk another mile and navigate through everybody, and I've already peed, I've already talked to Alex, we've already started talking to other people, and I've calmed down a lot by then, to the point to where I've started smiling, taking selfies, and the whole upset drag motherfuckers through the streets, that was 30 minutes prior. That was something that happened 30 minutes prior. But what the media and what the court system like doing is they like timing drag motherfuckers through the streets with a couple hours later of me in the tunnel and thinking that it's just the same thing. It's not. Like, there was time that had passed by, and it was like an emotional roller coaster. You'd get going really high and really low, and then really high and really low, and then everywhere in between. And so by the time I'm over there, going up to the West Terrace, we're just taking selfies. Like, I remember helping this elderly lady. She had to be in her 70s, not even in her 60s, in her 70s. And you couldn't get up the stairs. And so people were climbing the side of the stairs, the little wall right there is like an 8-foot, 10-foot wall, and they were helping people up, and they were grabbing people and pulling them up. And so she was like, son, can you help me? And I was like, yes, ma'am, I sure can. And she's like, I just want to get up there and see everything. I said, not a problem, ma'am. And so we grabbed her and we helped her up, and those guys grabbed her and pulled her up on the side of the wall. And that's what kind of atmosphere it was. It was like, I want to get up there and see. It's like, you remember that kid's song, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. Well, that's the same thing. He climbed up in that sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. That's how it was with us. Like, I just wanted to get up there. I'm a wee little man. I just want to get up there and see what's going on. And so I literally just thought about that on the spot, but like, that's what it felt like, and so yeah, there was just people that wanted to get up there and see. I had already calmed down by then. I wanted to get up there and say, hey, I came to Washington, D.C., and stood up on the Capitol and protested. There was nothing nefarious about it the entire time, really. But especially in that moment, us going up there to the Capitol was to say, hey, I went up there to the Capitol and I protested. And it was as simple as that. So we got up there at 3 p.m. on the West Terrace stage and went up the left side of the steps, probably around 8 or 9 steps up. And we sat there, and I turned around and started smoking on my vape pen. I passed it around a couple guys, and we were singing the national anthem, God Bless America, and stomping. Everybody was stomping their feet. And then around 3:10 p.m., 3:11 p.m., I remember somebody pointed over towards the tunnel and tapped on my shoulder. And this is all on CCTV cam and body cam. But somebody taps on my shoulder and points to the tunnel, and then I look towards the tunnel, and I tap on Alex's shoulder, and I point towards the tunnel as well. Now, if you line up tunnel body cam footage and CCTV camera from that time, you will see that there are people that are being whooped and sprayed and beaten, and that's when, some of the old men are coming out of the tunnel with cuts on their head, with pepper spray on their head, and there's women screaming, and we need men in the tunnel. And so Alex and I start moving from the stairs towards the tunnel because we hear people screaming for help. And when I heard people screaming for help, that was like a trigger for everything, with the hurricane search and rescue. Like when I had just got done hearing women yelling help in hurricanes, and I have videos of that too. And so when I hear help, it was a trigger for me just to get up in there. So we got near the tunnel, and there was a lady saying, we need men, help. And then all of a sudden, the entire crowd behind me, now I didn't know this. It was because there was a person breaking the window to the right. I can't see that from where I'm at with the way the stairs are set up. All I know is the entire crowd behind me starts yelling and pointing and saying, Antifa, Antifa, Antifa. And people are pointing into the tunnel, and people are coming out of the tunnel bloody and bruised. And so I don't know that they're yelling about the guy to the right that's breaking the window. We all think that they're yelling about what's happening inside the tunnel. And so they said, we need people in there, and boom, we piled in. And that's when the heave-ho started happening. That's when the pushing started happening. And we get inside of there, and most, if not all, of MPD or Capitol Police that was at the front, they were wearing black-clad gear that was not identifiable, had no markings on it. And so I'm literally thinking at that point, we are fighting Antifa. And 2 minutes later, we got in the tunnel at 3:16. At 3:18, I'd only been in the tunnel for 2 minutes, is when the Fanone incident happened. Fanone decides that he's going to run up inside of the tunnel, and he's going to kick some Trump supporters' ass, is what he thought. And he runs inside of the tunnel. And this is where things get really, really weird, is he runs into the tunnel and walks out into the crowd. And
as one does.
As any officer would do to an angry, violent crowd, what they would call an angry, violent crowd, you just blatantly just walk out there and start saying fuck you and fuck you to everybody else, right? No. This guy didn't get drug into the crowd. He walked into the crowd. And when he walked into the crowd, Tim, I don't know who's who. I don't know the guy that was doing this. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But damn if it didn't look weird and like a damn setup when they're talking to each other and he walks out and then he's like, all right, I got one, and then boom, it all just kicks off. And now all of a sudden that you're out in the crowd, you don't want to be out there now. And so I get pushed to the bottom of the stairs with Alex. And Fanone then starts coming and getting drugged to the bottom of the stairs as well after he walks out into the crowd. And because there are some pissed off people in the crowd. And there are some people that have been sprayed, have been beaten, and they're freaking pissed off at this point. There are also some bad actors in the crowd, i.e. Thomas Civic, you piece of shit. There are some bad actors in the crowd that day, and they were up to no good. So, yeah, you do have the people like Civic that, like a fucking barracuda, come out of nowhere and just run in and grab his wallet or grab his badge and grab his radio and then just disappear. You know, Alex and I sat right there, and Fanone got down to us. Our side of the crowd stopped it, and then you can see us pointing and saying, send him back up, get him back up to the top. That was the first incident that I had with an officer that day. And it scared the shit out of me. And you can see later on in the video, if you look down, you'll see it was Brick Suit's GoPro 360 video that took all of this. And so if you look in that video, after they send Fanone back up to the top, the crowd is just like nut to butt, chest to chest. And I turn to Alex and he turns to me, and we both grab each other's chest plates. And I'm fucking scared to death at this point because I'm just like, they really did just try to kill an officer in front of me. And somebody did really say, take his gun and kill him. And somebody else, that they were punching him and everything else. Now, some of it was real, some of it was not real. I've watched the video a fucking 1,000 times. You've watched the video as well. Some of it was organic, some of it was unorganic. Yeah. And I don't know how to explain it any other way than that. That's why we need all of the video released to the public so people can draw their own conclusions and can see. Because when you watch it the first time, it looks just like it looks, just like the news says it does. Hell, when you watch it the second, third, and fourth time, it looks just like it does. But when you watch it that fifth, sixth, and seventh time, and you start seeing the little hand signals or microphones and earpieces, or you start seeing the same person that was here with this same person that was over here a couple hours ago, and you're like, wait a second, there was too many people there that day for certain coincidences to be happening. And
it's even if you watch it, like there's a particular clip where Fanone is, he's moving through the crowd. There are a couple people who they'll try to yank at him or grab him or whatever. A lot of people were actually trying to help him, but there's this these interesting moments where someone like lightly grabs at him and he goes, ah! And it's just like, what is this acting? Because this is pretty pathetic.
100%. And so, like, that's where, like, I looked at it like, where he got tased, that's real. That dude really tased the shit out of you, and you can scream for that one. But having the same type of scream for when somebody grabs your arm, it detracts from everything else that happened. It makes it look like everything else really didn't happen. Now, Fanone, if you were just scared to death and screaming because you were fucking scared to death, just say that. But somebody grabbing your arm is not the same as somebody punching you in the mouth or spraying you in the face or tasing you in the neck. It's not the same, And so, I look at that stuff, and just like you, I watched a lot of this video, and when I started seeing the video after the 10th time, I knew something was wrong, and I knew something was off, and that's when we started. They called us the College of Collusion inside of C2B, because then we really started digging down on things like, hey, you were like, hey, Ryan, did you see this? And I was like, well, hey, Tim and Jeff, did y'all see these things? Look at this over here, and, hey, Kenny, check this out. Megs, check this out. Cash, look at this. And so, like, we really did become the College of Collusion in there, and we found out the answers, and they were not expecting us to do that, and we fucking did it.
Yep. Where did that come from? I remember hearing College of Collusion when we were in the jail. I thought it was initially
the Oath Keepers had a status hearing, and they went into the status hearing, and their AUSA, they started talking about the videos, and they started talking about how there was videos being added, and the AUSA came up inside there and said, this is ridiculous. This is nothing more than a college of collusion in there with these Jan Sixers inside of that pod. And so that's where the whole college of collusion came out, was from the Oath Keepers in their status hearing.
I was able to find one direct quote of that when I got out. Every time I've looked for an article now, it seems to be gone, but that's funny. And with regard to, it's a good thing we got as much of the video we did when we were actually incarcerated, because the majority of people on the outside didn't get to see Fanone playing possum, pretending that he was dead, peeking his eye open to mess with his camera.
People, I cannot believe when we found that, I was like, dude, I cannot believe this. So, just to give people that, if they haven't listened to my story, or if they're just now listening in for the first time, I know you've told this before, but we have video evidence of body cam of Michael Fanone when he's getting drugged back and he's claiming to be knocked out or unconscious. He's opening his eye and peeking down at his body cam as if he's like, oh, shit, I fucked up. This isn't supposed to be on. And he's moving his hand around trying to turn it off, and he's opening his one eye. And it's so very obvious that he's not unconscious and that this is a game. This is all an acting job. When we saw that, that is when I was just like, holy shit, this is crazy.
Yeah, crazy. It's, you know how you spell the word crazy? F-A-K-E. So this stuff's going on around the Lower West Terrace Tunnel. I want
to add one more thing about the Fanone incident that most people don't know about. 30 seconds after the Fanone incident happened, and this is all on video. It's all on Brick Suit's 360 GoPro film from that day. An officer walked by me. An MPD officer, 30 seconds after Fanone was taken up to the top of the stairs. He was by himself in the crowd. He was a black man, and in uniform, walking through the crowd, and he walked right past me, Alex, and everybody else in front of us. Nobody touched him. There was one man behind us, a civic-like character, who tried reaching his arm out, and we swatted his arm away so he couldn't hit or touch the cop. Okay, so when they say that the intention was to harm cops, literally 30 seconds after Fanone, an officer walked through the crowd right beside us. Nobody touched him. The idea was not to harm police that day. As much as they would like to make it seem that way, it wasn't.
Well, that's a good observation. And, I want to get to, I guess, really the resolution of your time at the tunnel and then the rest of the day. But actually, now that you mentioned that, I want to double back to this idea of people just going there to attack cops or whatever. You had mentioned earlier you'd heard explosions. A lot of people don't really understand that the motivation for, not everyone, but a lot of people who were there, even myself, who didn't even have assault charges, a lot of people who got rowdy or got pissed off were pissed not even because of the election. They were pissed because the cops didn't know how to conduct themselves, and they actually started launching ordnance like flashbangs into the crowd.
100%.
And you, of course, you had raised this issue, and they completely denied that there were any flashbangs even used until they were proven wrong. Is that correct?
Oh my God, Tim. That was with my first attorney. I forgot that. I fucking forgot that until now. So yes, the government. Oh my God, Tim. You have a mind like a steel trap, dude. And that's why, before I go any further, I want to tell everybody that this is why I always enjoyed being with him inside. And when I learned that I could trust him, and Tim, I don't say that the wrong way, because it's not that I just didn't want to trust you, but nobody could trust anybody inside of there when we first got in. Sure. As I'm sure there was a period where you didn't trust me at all. And that was just normal inside of there. But when I realized that I could trust you, and I realized I could come to you and tell you things, this is what I really liked, because do you remember shit that nobody else can remember? Yes, you are correct. I had my first attorney, and I told him that I went up there and these things happened after I was flashbanged. And the government doubled down, tripled down even. Flashbangs never happened. And they were like, and if you think that happened, please present a video to us of that happening. And so I remember going back to the pod and asking, and I said, Cash, I know you said you had a video of flashbangs going off. The government's calling me a liar. They're on the record saying that this never happened, that flashbangs never went off. Can you put this video out? And I remember him being so perplexed because he was telling me, like, Ryan, I don't want to put this video out. I don't want to do this until after I get out. I may not ever put these videos out. I don't want to get a felony off of this. I'm only facing a misdemeanor right now. If I put this out, I could be facing a felony, or I could go to prison even longer. I'm trying to get back home to my kids. Like, he was really perplexed about doing this, and now I can understand why, with how conspiracies and everything work. And he did it anyways. He got on the phone, and he said, I got you, because this is about, much more than just me. So Cash gets on the phone with his people, and it comes back to me, and he says, Ryan, tell your wife to go online and look here. And I get online, and sure enough, like, he released that video, and it started changing things. And yeah, we were able to take that and go back and start proving right then that the government was lying. And that is what started me on the path of firing my first attorney and hiring Joseph McBride and fighting the government tooth and nail on this thing when I realized that they were lying and we had the proof.
And that was really an uphill battle for everyone for years. Is that even today, of course, they still refuse to release video. But in the very beginning, there wasn't even a discussion about what the police may or may not have done wrong. It was purely that we were just some deranged mob. And then slowly
deserved everything that they threw at us anyways. And they didn't throw flashbangs, but even if they had, you deserved it anyways.
Right. You deserve to be kids and old ladies deserve to get body slammed with riot shields. It's
right.
Like,
at first they were like, that didn't happen, but if it did, you deserved it. And so like, they tried to discredit us and call us liars. And that's where just like with the whole paperwork and grievance process, that I knew that I had to document everything because I was going to be called a liar in this process, and my integrity was going to be questioned. And so I had to get video proof, and I had to get documents with witnesses that signed this stuff and stating that this is not just me saying this is others, because I could see the writing on the wall. They were going to try to discredit my word, and so I had to have everything backed up with evidence. And so that was what started me down the path of writing grievances and starting the process of, when we hired Joe, and then going through the habeas corpus process and really winning that. That process of me getting released after 2 years, that was simply Judge Hogan bringing Joe into the back office in his headquarters, in his chambers, and saying, I know I'm going to have to rule in your favor, and I can't do that. I refuse to do that, and so I want you to basically agree to drop it. I'll drop it without prejudice, and I'll let him go home. And so because the jail in Rappahannock denied me going into my bond hearing, and so it was just one thing after the next, and so finally Hogan was like, I'm going to have to rule on this, but if you make me go forward on this habeas, then I'm going to make your entire existence really hard. And so we agreed. I'm like, that's fine. That's what I wanted. Let me go home because I can prepare for trial from home. Right. And so though we didn't get a judgment in our favor, a win's a win to me. And so that's all I wanted. If I don't care if the order is granted or if we have to drop it without prejudice and I can bring it up later. If I got released because of it, it's a win to me. And so that's what we did. And won. But that's when I knew that the process, Tim, was fucked. Because you endured the same thing as me. In many cases, you could say it was worse in some ways because you were stuck in that cell when I got out on detail. And so you were there over a nonviolent crime, which you later beat. You were innocent the entire time. And so for them to fucking let me go home and not let you go home, and not to say that you didn't deserve it or even that I didn't deserve it. We neither deserve to be there. But the fact that because I went through a much more tough and rigorous process, of paperwork and everything else. And I had worse charges, but they let me go home when you face the same things and you didn't have a violent charge? Tim, that's fucked. That's wrong. And something's got to be done to fix that. And so, we'll get into that later, but that's why, one of the reasons why I'm running for Congress, and I'm going to change things. When I win, I'm going to change things. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's when I knew that this process was really bad. And I felt terrible. I felt terrible going home. I saw Kenny and Megs down there in the dungeon that day below the courthouse, and they were going into their trial, and I'm just looking at them, and I'm like, these guys are not guilty of what they're fucking accused of. They're not violent, yet here they are going into trial, and I'm headed home, and so and I thought about y'all inside of the DC jail, and I'm like, dude, like, this is crazy. And I got home. I was home all year for 12 months. And I would hear about the things going on inside of there with y'all. And it was not fun being home. Like, it was nice being home with my family, but I knew, like, dude, you're just going back to prison. So, like, I wasn't really able to enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't enjoyable all the way. And, as I started studying, and I had that year, and things started coming out. And another reason that Judge Hogan had to let me go home was because 11 and a half months prior, we had put in information in my first bond hearing in December 2021 about FBI agents in the crowd, confidential human sources, and he said on the record, don't bring any baseless conspiracy theories into my courtroom ever again. Now, 11 and a half months later, by the time he let me go, all of these quote-unquote baseless conspiracy theories had come to be true, and which we were using against him. And I knew that the only way to beat these people, I was going to have to be respectful, but I was going to have to whip their ass with the truth and with evidence. And I was going to have to do it in a classy and respectful way. But I'm still going to have to almost kind of embarrass them in a way and like really shove their nose in shit. And I remember thinking many times, like, dude, this is so ass backwards for how I want to go in and handle a court situation. Like, I really want to go in and be respectful and try to get this thing resolved and taken care of to where I'm not in any trouble at all. But I knew, you started realizing that wasn't possible. There is no working with these people. And so I sat down for a proffer in July of 2021, with June or July of 2021, when I had my first attorney. And he says, Ryan, you go in here and you sit down with them, and they've already told me, you sit down with them and you just tell them everything you did that day, and they're going to give you a really good deal, and you're not going to do that much time at all. These other guys, they're going to do a whole lot of time because they're going to try to play hardball. You just go in there and you tell them what you did, Marine. He tried to play on that whole Marine because he was a Marine from Vietnam, and he was a JAG attorney in the Marine Corps, and so he kept on trying to play hard on this whole, you're a Marine, be just an honorable Marine, and go in there and just tell them what you did, and you won't spend that much more time in. So I remember you and Pete and Shane, and you're like, don't fucking do it. Don't do it. They're just tricking you. They're going to use it all against you. And I remember Pete was like, why are you going to sit down with the FBI? You're a Fed. And I was like, fuck you, Pete. I ain't no Fed. I'm not telling on nobody. I'm just going in there to tell them what I did. And Pete was like, it don't work like that, Ryan. It doesn't work like that. I'm like, what the fuck you mean it doesn't work like that, Pete? He's like, it don't work like that. And if you go in there and do that, then you're just a goddamn Fed. And I remember being perplexed because I was like, I'm not going to tell on anybody, but these guys sure do feel a strong way about this. And what I do know is Shane and Pete had been to prison before. They knew how the system works. And so I am humble enough to know, like, if somebody's done something before and they're saying that this is how it works, well, that's probably how it works, And so I got up there and sat down with the FBI, and they put their little fucking Dr. Pepper and pepperoni pizza in front of me, and after 6 months inside of the fucking gulag, that shit was really good. Yes, it was. And they started asking me questions, And just like I told everybody after that day, I'm telling you now, and it's on 302, and I wish it would have been recorded, like actually recorded like we're doing now. Because I went in there and I told them everything I did. And then what's crazy is they didn't ask me about nobody in there. They asked me about 1% Watchdog, Stop the Still J6 Zello chat. Who was inside of there? When were you talking on it? And I didn't think about it right then because I'm thinking that they're going to – the most worrisome thing that I had on my mind right then is they're going to say, what are the guys in C2B saying? What's Tim Hell inside of there saying? What's Cash Kelly in there saying? Where was he at? Point to me where Jeffrey McKillop was that day. What was Peter Stager doing? That was what I was worried about, that they were going to ask me. That wasn't what they were asking me. They were saying, who's 1% Watchdog? How do you know him? How long have you known him? How long were you in the Stop the Steal J6 Zello chat? And so I'm just like, look, I was in that fucking chat group for this amount of time. I don't know the owner of it. You know who it is, 1% Watchdog right there. They're like, how do you know 1% Watchdog? I said, I know him through fucking hurricanes. I did hurricane search and rescue with him. I've been doing it for a couple years now. He got me on the fucking, helped me get on the Ellen DeGeneres show because he put me on a rescue. I don't know nothing about it. And they're like, how long did you talk in that channel? I was like, I didn't even talk in there on January 6th. And that's the truth. And I say that, Tim, to say that probably one of the things that saved me from a seditious conspiracy charge, and I thank God for this, is I never talked in the Stop the Steal J6 Zello chat on January the 6th. I talked in it leading all the way up to January 6th, into the night of January 5th, and I talked in it on January 7th. But January 6th, not at all. And so, that was because of everything going on. There was no service. My phone died shortly after we left the Ellipse and got down to the Capitol. My phone died, and so that's why I had to use Alex's phone to even call my dad that day. But the FBI, they weren't worried about what was going on inside of that pod. No. They were worried about what was going on inside of the Stop the Steal J6 Zello chat, and so I didn't think about it that day. I'm just thinking, like, what are the guys in the pod going to think when I get back? They're going to accuse me of being a Fed, and I'm like, how do I tell them that I didn't get asked about any of them? Because they're going to be like, well, sure, that's exactly what a goddamn Fed would say, And when I got back, that's what everybody said. And but the truth is, they only wanted to know about these Zello chats. They wanted to know what I knew. And if I was going to go in there and expose their ass at trial or any further along the road. And so I remember getting back from that and thinking, like, okay, like I went in there and told these, people everything, really. I told them about the guns that I brought. And, dude, that shit was nerve-wracking. Sitting in a back room with just my attorney, 2 FBI agents, and the AUSA, I forget her name. She was a female at the time. At the time, my AUSA was a female. She didn't transition or anything. I remember it after I said that. I was like, it seems like she's a male now. No, she's still female. She was pregnant, getting ready to have a baby, so she got switched out, and I got taken over to Brazier, and that's who I had for the rest of the time. But, they weren't worried about anybody else inside of there. They were worried about that Stop the Steal J6 Zello chat. They were worried about the guns that I brought that day. They were worried about, what was my intention after that, that I said that I was the leader of the Second American Revolution. What was I planning on leading? Who did I plan on leading? Like, they thought that I was like Jake Lang and set up my militia or something like that. And it wasn't like that at all. I'm just talking a whole bunch of shit that day. And, and so I get back and they question me. I tell them everything. What happened before that day? What happened during that day? What happened after that day? And when I got done, I felt better. Because I literally got everything off my chest, and they're like, why did you assault those people or the cops? And I told them because they were beating a woman, and they're like, that's when they started in, like, we have no evidence that happened. We have no evidence of flashbangs going off in the crowd. We have no evidence of a woman being beaten or anybody being hurt that day by police. And so they're like, do you have evidence of that, Mr. Nichols? Because we know that you deleted evidence off your phone. And so if you had that, why did you delete the evidence? And so they were trying to turn everything back against me. And at that point, I was just like, I don't know. I've got to go find it. But, I know it happened. So I get done, and I'm thinking, okay, I got done saying everything. Buck's like, good job. You'll probably get an offer for 5 years or something like that, 7 years. And we can try to get it down to 60 months or 72 months and just get you out here in a couple of years and get you on some credits in prison. Like, he's just trying to talk me through hey, I'm going to get you a good deal. 3 weeks goes by. It's 2 or 3 weeks. And, I remember he tells me to call him, and I get on the phone with him, and he is fucking livid. He is livid. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, I got your plea deal back. And he's like, these sons of bitches. And I was like, what is it? And he was like, they're asking for 120 to 150 months. 78 to 97 if you take the plea deal, or 97 to 108 if you take the plea deal. I said, what the fuck, Buck? You telling me 10 fucking years? 10 years? 10 to 12? And I was like, I just went in there and told him everything. You told me if I did this that I was going to, he said, I fucking know what I told you. He was mad at the prosecutor. He was like, they tricked me. They lied to me. These sons have been he's like, let me get on the phone and get to work right now. So I remember he gets off the phone with me. And I'm like, oh my God, they just tricked. And that's when I remember, I think I came over, I told Cash, I told you or Kenny, the guys I was close with in there, started letting y'all know, don't go fucking do this. I just got fucked.
Yeah.
And, I'm honestly, if it was going to happen to anybody, I am glad it happened to me. Because can you imagine somebody else inside of there going and sitting down with the feds and that happening to them and them having to come back and eat crow and saying, hey, don't go sit down with the fucking FBI. They're going to fuck you. And can you imagine what we would have done to them and how hard of a time we would have given them? And, how somebody, I'm not going to say any names, somebody might have beat their ass for doing that. And so the fact that it did happen with me, and I was able to already have kind of a foothold inside of there of some type of honesty with people and helping guys, and able to come out and just eat crow and say, yeah, guys, I went and sat down with the FBI. You guys were right. It was the wrong decision. Don't go do it especially if you're trying to go to trial, because now I'm fucked. They know everything. There's nothing that I have inside of my pocket that I can pull out. I have no bargaining chip now. Now, really, I did, which was the whole entrapment, but I didn't know it at that point. So, I'm just, man, that, and I'm glad I got to talk about that with you. I've never talked about that, the FBI sit down with anybody, because I told you, too, that I would give you that story first. And so this is me holding up to my end of the deal of my word, is telling you about that. But you already knew the story, but I haven't been able to tell that publicly to anybody. And that shit pissed me off so bad because during that process I was going through my own I had been growing up to trust the police and go in there and tell the truth and be an honorable man. And then I found out that being an honorable man and telling the truth fucked me. And it would not help you at all. It would actually hurt you. And so, just like the whole, and we'll have to save this story for another day, but the whole poo-poo pee-pee type thing, and that we would say in the DC jail, they were rewarding bad behavior. And when bad behavior starts getting rewarded in the legal and justice system, we've gone completely backwards in this country, but that's what it is, especially in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of that, a lot of it can really be summarized as, everybody's been saying this. The process is the punishment.
Correct.
And, I remember,
and it really was, because once the process was over, and I finally got to prison, not that the punishment was over, because it was a different punishment in a different type of way. Prison was a different type of animal and beast in itself, but it definitely wasn't legal punishment and lawfare that was pushed against us for the first 3.5 years or 3 years. Like that's a totally different type of punishment. It's more mental than anything. And so, like, when you get to prison, it is mental, but it's a lot of physical and, like, just, playing a chess game and, like, moving around with the right people.
A lot of prison is just waiting out the clock, figuring out your structure, and just getting on with your day, as opposed to in DC, that was really more of just torture, really. It was psychological torture
all day for years. I mean, think about that. I try to tell people that, but you can't make somebody begin to understand that, because you'll get them. Let's just say this. Even right now, inside of this interview, if we were to tell people, hey, if you want to imagine what solitary confinement's like, close your eyes and think about being in your closet. And now you're going to be in that closet for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so you start imagining what weeks feel like alone. But Tim, really, I gave you this example. I mean, we think about it for 30, 60, 90 seconds, and then you stop thinking about it. Well, really, solitary confinement like that, you don't stop thinking about it ever. It just keeps on going. You just keep on thinking about that, and you don't stop thinking about that. That's what solitary confinement's like.
Yeah.
And so these people, when they stop thinking about jail in 30 seconds, and then they start thinking about fucking McDonald's or going for a ride on their side-by-side, or getting in their car and going down the road, or if it's about to rain or not, they don't have to think about that solitary confinement example anymore. Solitary confinement, though, real solitary confinement is even when you don't want to think about that example anymore, it's still continuing to happen right then. That's what solitary confinement was like. There was no getting away from it. There was no escaping it.
No, time basically ceases to exist. Yeah, it's like Groundhog's Day. Every day is the same. It's on loop. You lose track of even time itself. You wake when breakfast is delivered at like 3 a.m. Your whole concept of even what a day is gone. You forget. Like, sometimes it feels like a month went by. It was actually a week. Yeah, I mean, it is torture,
I always told people, it's so funny you say that. I told people for the longest time, a day is longer than a week is longer than a month inside of there.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it, but it just is. Like, that hour is the longest hour. And it's like, well, that day just went by quick, but that hour this morning was a long time. But the week went by really quick, but that one day seemed forever. And so, like, jail time, and especially jail time, when you're not leaving that pod, it's different.
Pure time dilation. Like you're waiting, especially when you're waiting for rec or you're waiting to get out of your cell. That time outside flies by real quick. When you're in there and you're waiting to get out of your dog kennel, that's just torture. It's kind of like when you're this is a dumb example, but you remember being at school waiting for the day. You're watching the clock. That arm on that clock is moving so slow. That's really what it is, times 1,000.
I mean, it's like that Dwight Yoakam song, I'm 1,000 miles from nowhere. Time don't matter to me. Like, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
That's two songs. That's 2 songs that I've used in this podcast. Can I go for a third one?
Let's find out. 1,000 bottles of beer on the wall.
Oh, there we are. We did it. Yeah, dude. And so, like, that's really like just time, and it was just day after day. It was monotonous over and over, and the mind games that were played inside of there by the government, first of all, the DOJ. Then you have the games played by the government or the jail. And then you had the games played by the media, which we could still see. And then you had the games played by counter-protesters that hated us, that were sending in mail that was allowed in by the jails. And that was its own form of a little psychological warfare, because you didn't know what's good mail and what's not good mail. I talked about that yesterday. I think I left DC with over 600 pieces of mail the first time that I left. I never responded to a single piece of mail, ever. I never wrote back one person at all.
I didn't either. I felt a little guilty, but at the same, like I appreciated it. But I thought, to be frank, maybe you agree. I not only did I know that they were reading our ingoing and outgoing mail, but I also felt like a lot of it was itself sort of a honeypot trying to extract information out of us.
100%. I agree 100%. So I knew, like you did, they were reading the mail, coming in, going, and outgoing. And I'm like, even if they're not reading my incoming and outgoing mail, I can't take the chance that which piece of mail is going to go to the Fed and which piece of mail is not going to go to the Fed. And then, based off of which one goes, I know that I could write the complete perfect letter and it could still be taken out of context and used for any type of narrative of what they want. Take a couple words here, a couple words there. All of a sudden, you've got this guy is wanting to do it again, and I couldn't allow that to happen for the purpose of my wife and kids. There are so many times when I'm like, if I didn't have a wife and kids, this process would be so much easier because I could just go balls to the wall, say whatever I wanted to say, do whatever I wanted to do, not worry about the consequences or what was going to come behind it, and I could deal with that. But when I know that I got a wife and two small children here at the house that are expecting to hear Dad's voice every day, it causes you to move differently and do things that you normally wouldn't want to do, up to and including taking a plea deal, and so, we get into that, and I know everybody has different motivations for taking a plea deal. I was going to take a plea deal up until the point that I, proffered, and even after that. When I got done proffering and realized that I had been screwed over, I vowed I was going to fight the government tooth and nail because I'm not taking a plea deal for 10 to 12 years. You're going to have to give that to me. And so if you would have offered me a regular plea deal for 5 years, that I wound up taking anyways, then you would have had me. But when you came out with the outrageous 120 to 150 months, you're out of your goddamn mind. I'm not just taking that. You're going to have to give that to me. And so when they did that, it was like, cool, Buck, you're fired. And who's the hardest-nosed pit bull that I can find? One that's just putting his middle finger up to the government and saying, fuck you every time he gets a chance. And the first person that Bonnie found was Joe. I couldn't find anybody. And I'm in jail. So she went and found Joe. And she was like, I just had a man that tricked my husband, used his veteran status basically against him, had him go talk to the FBI, and now he's looking at 10 to 12 years. Can you help? And he was like, hell yeah, I can help. And he did. Well, he came in there and started whooping the government's ass. And there was some times where it was it was kind of sketchy because Joe went really hard on them, but he started uncovering things that I had never seen before, and that I couldn't grasp at that time until he started explaining it. He started sending me books, and I remember Joe was telling me every single day, he said, Ryan, you call me every day no matter what so we can check in. And we would talk for 30 minutes to an hour every single day. And I remember he would send me books about the FBI and how they entrapped people, and he would send me books about COINTELPRO. And he would send me books like Mark Bray, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. And he was like, and I was like, Joe, why are you sending me Antifa's book? He was like, study your enemy. Know your enemy. This is their playbook. This is what they do. And so that was my first time that I became open to the idea of reading what I could say, what you would call the enemy's literature, and reading their playbooks and their textbooks. And so I started reading it, and things started making sense. Now, all of a sudden, things that I would see in the evidence and in videos, I'm like, oh my God, that I see in my discovery is the same thing that I'm reading in this book right here. That's the same thing. And so not only would I read it from one book, I would read it from a second book and a third book that had been written 10 and 20 years prior to this. And that's when I realized, boy, we've been set the fuck up. We have been played, and everything that we thought was real. Yeah. And we didn't know how to explain it in really yet. And we weren't able to put it together fully. But you and I and Kenny and Megs and Sable and Jess, we started realizing there's a lot more going on here, and we have to do this. Who, if not us, then who? Because it wasn't going to be our attorneys that saved us. They weren't going to do the work. It was going to have to be us. It wasn't going to be the American people. They weren't going to get to see the footage. They still don't really get to see the footage.
Yeah.
No. If anybody was going to save us, it was going to be us that was going to have to save us. And we did. And so we started combing through video evidence, and we started assigning people tasks. You go look at these videos. Hey, Guy, you go look at these. Jess, you look at these. I'll look at these. Tim, you look at these. And we come back to each other, and Padilla, you look at these. And Mink, you look at these. And all of a sudden we're like, did y'all see this? Did you see that? And then we started finding the towel video, and we started finding, all these different, the Phenome video. And, we started saying, well, basically, when we started finding this, it was like there was newfound hope, and albeit it was long-term hope, it was like smoke on a fire. You're looking to find that fire, and there's like, fuck, there's no fire. I need a fire right now, and all of a sudden you lift up that rock, and there's smoke, and you're like, we got a fire now, boys, and we all just get around and we just start blowing and putting the kindling on there. And by God, if we didn't make us a fire,
it was really, I can't again, I don't want to shine too much of a spotlight on us because there were so many others who were in other jails or prisons or people doing, dealing with their own stuff throughout the country. But it's like, for those of us who were in there, it was especially important because even now, I don't think most January 6th defendants, and there's a lot who are active even on social media now, they didn't look through really any of the video. They have no idea half the things we found. There were a couple.
Many of them were sitting inside of that pod with access to the discovery, not looking at anything. They had already accepted that they had been defeated.
Yeah.
And that was scary to me.
Yeah. That kind of made the uphill battle a little more, we were like kind of like Sisyphus, always rolling the boulder up the mountain every day, only for it to roll back down. It was like even a lot. And again, like you said, a lot of people had lost hope. I think some other people had other reasons for not bothering to investigate, but it was like only about a third of the pod was doing this research. And it was like, if only we could have marshaled more people, more manpower, I think we probably could have, we definitely would have uncovered so much more.
100%. And then I'll be honest with you, and I like that we can finally start having these talks because it's nice. At first, I felt ashamed and embarrassed for a while because there were nights when I didn't sing the national anthem. There were nights and days when I was pissed off at Trump, when I was pissed off at the current administration now and the administration before the last one, the Biden one. Even Biden's, I'm pissed off at everybody. There were times when I lost hope too inside of there. And so I went up and down like a roller coaster at many times. Much of that due to mental health issues that I had and still have. Diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression, dealing with torture because we were all being tortured. There were times when I wanted to kill myself, and I got suicidal inside of there. And so I say this to tell people that you can go through that, though, and make it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've got to keep pushing forever, Tim, and that we should keep on pushing to people because there are going to be other people eventually that get arrested for their beliefs, whether that be, today or 10 years from now. Now, if you're at a riot today, you're a fucking idiot. If you're at one of these No Kings events, you're just an idiot. You've been told, January 6th is different. That literally just popped off. Okay, we knew January 6th was going to be a day, but we didn't know that there was going to be a riot. These people have been planning violence for days. Now you can say Insurrection Act, you can say we planned that, but that's not
It's a completely different animal.
It is completely different. Like, these people are illegals.
I just had a debate. Well, yeah, that's another aspect too. I just had a debate yesterday, and they were actually making the argument January 6th was worse because it was a true insurrection, because it was motivated by hate, whereas these LA riots aren't even riots, man, because like they're motivated by love. It's such an arbitrary distinction, but you see how the narrative.
What was that shooting of the senators in Minnesota today? Was that motivated by love?
Apparently, if you're a leftist retard.
I mean, I guess if bullets now are love tokens, and I guess that's that's what sharing the love is nowadays. If you're a liberal. And so I know that we didn't shoot anybody on January 6th, but I know that leftists shot somebody on January 6th, and by God, if they didn't shoot somebody on June 14th on No King's Day too.
That's actually, I actually want to hone in on that. That's a good transition back to the tunnel. Ashley Babbitt was shot on January 6th, a Trump supporter, a protester. Roseanne Boylan also died near the area you were at, the Lower West Terrace Tunnel. You had mentioned people were being beaten. I believe you actually, to wrap up the scene at the tunnel, you were trying to help a woman named Victoria White. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I thought that they were going to kill her. I thought Officer Bagshaw was going to kill her single-handedly. And so, yeah, to get into that, I hear somebody screaming for help. And she's right in front of me, and there's this heave-ho going on after the Fanone thing. And look, we're standing out in the crowd, and we're seeing people on video. Now people in the crowd are showing videos of the other side of the Capitol. People are inside, taking pictures, taking selfies. And so now the crowd is thinking, okay, like, we can go in. So they start going up the steps, and yeah, there is a heave-ho going up the steps. And but we're thinking we're going inside now. And so, but we get right back up to the top of the steps, and you can't see what's going on in front of you because the steps go up, and the person in front of you is like 6 foot tall. I'm 5'8". Like I said, I'm a wee little man, so I'm trying to get up there and see what's going on. And as I get up there to see, like, when you get to the top of the steps, you can see why people are trying to go backwards and getting over the top and going down below you, and people are just disappearing. And you get up to the front, and you're like, oh, shit, this is the cops again. And they're not talking. They're whooping your ass. And so you get up to the front, and there's a lot of heave-hoing going on, but we're not touching the police. That's the thing. Like, I can get up to the front, and they're like, hey, you can't go past this. Okay, well, I won't go past this, but that doesn't give you the right to, if you tell me, don't go past this, and I don't go past this, well, you just indiscriminately start spraying behind me and on me just because I'm up close to that line. We're not past that line. We're not touching you. So that's what happened. People got up close to the line. They wanted to protest. They weren't passing the line, but the cops started spraying us and beating us and pushing us and everything else. And so when that started happening, everything popped off. And so I'm sitting there, I think like Shane's in front of me or to the right of me. Victoria's like right in front of me. Alex is like right behind me. And we're starting to walk into the tunnel. And then Bagshaw starts signaling for the officer that's on the ledge. I forgot his name, but I've got this all on video, and I'm going to release this video if I can get permission or as soon as I get in Congress. If I wasn't going to get in trouble, I'd just go ahead and release it. But it shows all of this play-by-play. This is what I was going to play at trial. Bagshaw tells him to start spraying us. He starts spraying. We tell him to stop spraying. An officer in the other side of the tunnel yells and starts motioning at Bagshaw to stop spraying us. And he motions 4 times for the officer on the ledge and for Bagshaw to stop spraying us, including going across his throat, like with the cutthroat, and saying, stop spraying them, stop spraying them. And so when they don't stop spraying us, that officer leaves the tunnel. And so you've got multiple officers, not just him. There's another officer in there, which I have him on body cam. You can clearly hear him, stop spraying. You're going to kill him. And he says this, you're going to kill him. Now, the prosecution tried telling me Mr. Nichols never heard any of this. Well, the body cam proves otherwise. Because you can clearly see me in the body cam and on CCTV when these things are happening, and then a woman starts screaming. The officers are saying, stop spraying. She starts screaming. She's saying, I can't breathe. Help. And then we're trying to help. And then finally, I reach over and I signal after the officer tells the guy on the ledge for like the third or fourth time to stop spraying. And I hear another officer back there telling him to stop spraying. And I hear a woman yelling for help. And Victoria's getting sprayed and getting pushed around, about to be beaten here in a few seconds. And I'm being sprayed, and I just can't breathe anymore. All this is going on around me. Yeah, I turned to the left, and I signaled for what we now know is a confidential human source. He was working for the FBI, the guy that had the spray bottle, but I signaled him for to hand me the spray bottle. Now, why did I signal him this? Back in 2010, I went to Okinawa, Japan in the Marine Corps. As soon as I get there, I was assigned to the Auxiliary Security Forces, and we were guarding the base for the 10th anniversary of 9/11, which we went to a heightened security alert. And during that time, I had to take an OC spray course. And I got sprayed and had to go through the exact process of learning what the continuum of force is if somebody uses spray against you, even as a United States Marine and a civilian. You know, what can you do and what can you not do to somebody? And so when Bagshaw orders his little goons and his clowns up there to start spraying us, I knew from the Marine Corps what the U.S. government had taught me, that what they were doing was unlawful. You can't do that. And so after it happens time and time again, and you had an officer saying, stop spraying them, you're going to kill them, and another officer saying, stop spraying them, and a woman screaming for help, and I can't fucking breathe anymore. Yeah, I signaled over, give me that fucking bottle of spray, and I turned around and I sprayed the officer that was spraying. I sprayed Bagshaw, and I sprayed anybody else that had a canister of spray back there. And I looked up, I was going to go hand it away, and he reaches that canister up again, and I sprayed his ass one more time, and he puts that canister down. And as soon as he put the canister down, I met him with the equal force that he was using against us, which was deadly force, but I didn't use deadly force. I just used the equal force with the spray. He stopped spraying. As soon as you stop with the continuum of force, I go down with the continuum of force. And so I hand the spray bottle away. He stopped spraying, but at that time, Victoria's already up inside of the tunnel. Shane's inside of the tunnel, and I'm getting pushed from the crowd behind me, who's heave-hoing me as well. And so we get pushed in, and that's when fucking Bagshaw, he just pulls out that baton, and he starts whacking. Whack, whack, whack. Because he sees me, who just sprayed him. I'm getting closer. Now, I'm not trying to be around this guy. I'm trying to back out, but you can't back out because people are pushing you in there. And so he starts whacking people, whacking Shane in the head, whacking Victoria. We're grabbing people and trying to pull. Shane's trying to pull Victoria out. A guy steps right over the top of my head. I get down on the fucking ground and start low crawling out of the tunnel. And that's why you see me disappear. I'm there for a second. I go down. And if you look, when the ladder starts going into the tunnel, that orange ladder is when I go out of the tunnel. But if you look at CCTV cam from inside of the tunnel, and then you look at the TV or the camera from outside of the tunnel, you don't see me walk out. You just see my head go down inside of the tunnel, and then all of a sudden you see it pop up 10 feet outside of the tunnel. Like, well, where the hell did he come from? I just fucking low crawled from a war zone inside of that tunnel outside. Get me out of that trench, you know? And so, yeah, man, obviously you can see I start getting worked up when I talk about it, but that's the suppression of not being able to tell my story for 4 years. This is the first time publicly where it will go out via airwaves that I've been able to tell that story. I told it one time last week in Nash, Texas, in front of a crowd of 25 people, and it felt really good to tell it. It felt really good to tell it right then too. And I didn't go in there with the intentions of spraying an officer. I didn't even know that was going to happen until like right in the moment when it happened, only because it was happening to me, only because my mind flashed back to Okinawa, Japan in the Marine Corps. And my sergeant's saying, if you get sprayed in the eyes, Nichols, what do? Spray it back, sir. You know, and so like,
what's important, that actually, a lot of people who don't, like, I know this from being in the military, and you do as well. You also, I mean, even when I was a security officer for the Navy as a contractor, you have, like you had mentioned, there is the escalation of force in any circumstance, whether you're doing security, whether you're out in a war zone, you always have this tier of force you're allowed to use. And that applies to law enforcement as well. You can't just, like, I was right before we did this, I was going through my old transcripts with my interview with Padilla, and it's remarkable how many times they used.
Brother, they did him wrong. Like, you want to talk about an escalation of force that's wrong? That one was wrong.
Literally beat him over the head till he blacked out using deadly force. And this was going to lead me to my next question, actually. To what extent, where do you, I mean, obviously there's the question of the FBI, the question of Pelosi or what have you, but on the ground there that day, do you think the escalation of an unauthorized, let's say, protest or trespassing, whatever, to a full-blown riot, do you believe that the Capitol Police or the Metro Police played a bigger part in that whole thing?
100% Metro. 100% Metro. Capitol Police, they're used to protesters. Look, they're going to be nice with protesters. If you want to come inside, they'll let you inside. It wasn't Capitol Police that got violent. It was Metro.
Yeah.
I don't have nothing against Capitol Police. I mean, except Officer Byrd. I got a real problem with Byrd. And anybody that defends his actions, I have a problem with that. But everybody else from the Capitol Police, like, I really didn't have an issue with that day. Everybody that I've seen to find issues with was MPD.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like a lot of...
And I guess besides Harry Dunn. Was Harry Dunn Capitol Police?
Yeah, he's Capitol Police. But and that's actually a good point, is that I think that a lot of the Capitol Police... And again, I do think some of them were nice, but in general, I think a lot of them were kind of... In case
I think
of, like,
the Capitol Police were the bought and paid for ones. They're the ones that knew what was going to happen. The Metro was their little pit bulls that day. You know, Capitol Police knew what was going to happen, and Metro was their pit bulls.
When you look at, like, for instance, when Joshua Black was shot through the face, I think a lot of, I don't know if that was planned ahead of time. I think in general the Capitol Police were just kind of unprepared slobs. And then I think the Metro PD, really, like you said, yeah, I think that they kind of were not just pit bulls, they were rabid pit bulls. Like, a lot of their injuries, kind of like you had mentioned with the tunnel, were self-inflicted. They wouldn't stop spraying even when they would get blowback. They would be told to stop spraying by their own superiors, even their subordinates. They clearly were being told constantly to stop spraying. And a lot of their injuries were self-inflicted because the wind was actually carrying their own mace back into their faces. They threw I don't know if you remember that video. I think it was in the tunnel. They threw a flashbang or some sort of explosive, and it landed on one of their own guys' necks. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's just like the West Terrace. The West Terrace was lost single-handedly from Metro PD, who said, put that motherfucker into the bleachers back there. Well, yeah, you did, right behind your own lines, into your own officers. You know, like, we didn't do that day. They did that.
Yeah. It was, and again, there were provocateurs, there were certainly interesting characters in the crowd, but when you have that many people, it's going to happen, even ignoring the setup aspect of it. But the vast majority of people there were reactive, not proactive. I think a lot of it boils down to the police a lot of them were unprepared. Some of them might have been paid off. Some of them might have been provocateurs themselves, like Tao. But in general,
100%. I believe, and that's what I believe. Just like, you know, I don't believe all MPD was bad that day.
Yeah.
You know, were there bad MPD officers that day? Yes. Were they all bad? No. You know, like, that would be silly to believe that. But yeah, like, when you get down to it, you can clearly see, like, there's videos of some guys, some of those MPD officers that you can probably tell are not in the good old boys club. They were like, we got set the fuck up today, you know? And then there's guys like Tal that are going there like, put it in the bleachers. And so there was two different mindsets that day. One that was just there doing their job, really, and got caught off guard with it as well, and another one that was there nefariously.
Yeah, and it's literally like I just said, that there's proper crowd control techniques, none of them really used. And then and there's maybe a few of them tried initially, like as I would say more so the Capitol Police, and then you have people who literally just saw targets in the crowd and just it's kind of like that meme with Danny DeVito. So I just started blasting, so and that's really what I think a lot of it was, and it's just a shame because all these years, and again, I just had a debate with someone about this. People have no fucking idea. They believe the same 30-second clips of, say, Pizzola breaking a window or whatever for 4 years, and they don't question what happened before that. They don't question anything about what happened throughout the entire day besides what they've been fed by, the Daily Beast or something. There's no context provided. And so that's why I do these interviews, because, well, obviously, one, we need to get our stories out, but two, it's like, they've been gatekeeping the truth through the mainstream media and filings by prosecutors, which are what are cited by the mainstream media. And meanwhile, what actually happened, like the eyewitnesses, you, myself, and others, we were there. Nobody gives a shit what we have to say about it. Nobody cares. And that's why I especially like to take like this part here where we go through the entire day, what actually happened. Because They look at everything through a snippet, through one still frame of a video, and they build an entire narrative around it. Meanwhile, we've been going through months before, years before even, up to this point, the background, then the hours and hours of what actually happened that day to provide context. And that's something they never seem to care about, and they never will, because they're all fundamentally dishonest. And so from this point on, okay, so you're, all this madness is going on at the tunnel. You're able to kind of squeeze out, avoid getting trampled, I suppose. What happens from that point? When do you call it quits? You're like, I don't know, you, Alex, like, you got to get out of there. The day is over. Like, take us through that point. How does the day end for you?
So I get out of the tunnel. And I've got video of this part as well. Get out of the tunnel, and I come up, and I say, Alex. I start yelling for him, and I see him, and I say, they're hitting people in the head with batons in the tunnel. They're hitting people over the head. And you can clearly see me saying it on video. And it's almost like somebody was watching me and zoomed in on me saying this. It was so weird. Almost like you were being followed and watched that day,
Almost.
And so you can clearly see me say this, and then I come down, and we're in front of the window, and I think the window is getting busted out or about to be busted out, and cops are whooping people's ass. I'm thinking they're coming out of the tunnel, and so the window gets busted, and somebody goes through. I think Alex goes through, and then I'm like, fuck it, I'm going in. And to me, it was like my Mount Suribachi moment. Raising the flag on Mount Suribachi. All I wanted to do was go inside and protest. I had seen people on video outside, on the stage that had people inside protesting. And that's all people had wanted to do from the very beginning. We wanted to go inside, we come up the stairs, and let us inside to protest. And so when I got inside of the room, we all got in there. And I remember Alex looking at me and me looking at him. We're like, okay, what now? And I'm like, I don't know. I did it. And it just really goes back to at 3 p.m. when we got on the stage. I remember Alex looking at me. He's like, well, what happens now? And I was like, well, I think that's it. If Pence already certified, that's it. We had this talk on the stage right as soon as we got up there. And I remember thinking, there's nothing more you can do. So when they try to say we wanted to go in and stop the certification, that's not true. I thought Pence had already certified it, and that's why I said that in the video walking down there. We're hearing Pence already certified and caved, and if he did, that's when we're going to drag motherfuckers through the streets. And so, this whole thing about they tried to go in there and overturn the results of the election, That's just simply not true, and the video evidence proves that. We thought it was already over with, which is why we were pissed off. We didn't think there's any undoing that. We're just fucking mad and want to protest at this point, you know? And so when we're in that room, and I remember the first thing that I did was we overturned the table and put it up under the side of the door. There was one door coming in and going out of the room, and there was a couple guys in there, and they were wanting to go out of that door. And like Gina Bisignano, she wanted to go through that door, and I'm like, fuck no, we're not going through that door. We just got our ass whooped on the other side of that door. I just wanted to go in the building and have my Mount Suribachi moment. So we flipped over the desk, we shoved it up underneath the handle of the door, and no cops are coming in that room. You're not coming in here and whooping my ass or shooting me with those pepper ball guns or spraying me. No more. It's not happening, you know? And so we're sitting in there, and I remember just leaning up against the table, and we're talking for a second, and then I start looking out the window, and I start seeing people standing there, and then I hear them saying, they killed her, she's dead. And we're like, who's dead? And so my Alex starts getting a call from my dad, and he gets a text, and the text is from my dad, and it's my dad's telling us, hey, they've labeled you guys as anarchists, and they have killed somebody, they shot somebody up there, which I didn't know he was referring to Ashley Babbitt at that point. And he's like, you guys need to get out of there. And so they're yelling through the window about somebody dying. And obviously, like you said, we know this is Ashley. So then I go to the window, and I get on outside of the window, and I say, like, hey, my dad just called me. I got some intel that I can give. And they're like, hey, this guy said he's got intel. And I'm like, yeah, you know, my dad just called and found out some information. And so they're like, get him a bullhorn. And so they bring a bullhorn across the crowd. I didn't bring a fucking bullhorn that day. And had I known that a bullhorn was going to make me look like a provocateur, I would have never got on a bullhorn. I just would have yelled. And so they hand this bullhorn to me, and I get on this bullhorn, and I'm saying, hey, just got word that they killed I'm thinking it's a 14-year-old girl. They're telling me it's a 14-year-old girl. I didn't know that. How long had Ashley been in the Air Force? Was it 14 years?
I think it was something like that. A couple tours, like 14 years, yeah.
I think people got facts mixed up, and we thought they had shot and killed a 14-year-old girl. And so I'm telling people hey, they just shot and killed a 14-year-old girl, and that they labeled you as anarchists. And so right as I'm saying this, to the left of me, Bagshaw has ordered the officers in the tunnel to open up and start pepperballing them. And they all start coming backwards. And that's when Roseanne is getting crushed and killed. And so people are screaming as I'm on the bullhorn. And I look over and see this happening. And that's when I start in with the whole, if you have a weapon, you need to get your weapon. Because I can hear the pop, 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 pop in the tunnel. I'm just told on the phone that somebody had been shot and killed. I just came from inside of the tunnel where I thought I was going to die, or they were going to kill another woman. And so I start hearing a click, click, pop, pop, pop. And I'm thinking they're shooting. People are screaming. And so that's when I start saying, yeah, if you have a weapon, you need to get your weapon. And that they've labeled you as anarchists, and get in there and defend yourself. Because I'm thinking now they just opened up on American citizens, and I'm in full-blown meltdown PTSD mode in this moment. Like, my full-on Marine Corps senses have just kicked in, and I am no longer Ryan Nichols. I'm Corporal Nichols at this point. And all my training from 2nd Battalion, 1st Marine Division is now kicking in, and boot camp and Marine combat training and everything else. And I am just going with the flow at this point. And then finally, everybody's phone starts going off simultaneously. I'm standing up there, and finally I get off this bullhorn, and I look over at Alex, and everybody's phone starts going off at like 4:40, 4:42, or at 4:35 or something like that. Everybody's phones goes off. And when everybody's phones goes off, we decide, hey, let's leave, because when they say that the National Guard, or they said that there's a curfew, well, I had worked hurricanes and natural disasters, and I knew what a curfew meant. Curfew means National Guard's coming in and you're going to get arrested. And I'm not having no part of that. I had seen that happen in hurricanes, and I'm not messing with the National Guard. And so I left. And so that's on video as well at 4:44 p.m. Right Side Broadcasting Network shows Alex and I exiting the Capitol grounds. And I'm talking shit on the way outside of the Capitol grounds as well. But I had just watched the most horrific things at that point in front of me happen about what I first thought was Antifa, and then learned were officers, like police officers. And I cannot believe that they were treating people like this. And we walked out off the Capitol grounds, and we had to walk all the way back, like past the White House and everything, in order to get an Uber to go back to Virginia, to the hotel. And so we got in the Uber, and I remember the Uber driver looking at us because, like, we had body armor on still because we've been wearing that all day. And I had, my boots on. Alex had his boots on, blue jeans,
smelling of spray,
just reeking of pepper spray as soon as we got in the car. And like, he's like looking at us like, who the fuck are you guys? And he didn't say nothing though. And it kind of weird, as if like he looked at us and then he just didn't care that we reeked of pepper spray, as if it was just a normal occurrence around DC, as I'm sure it is. And we went back to the hotel in Virginia, and then we got to Virginia and got back in the hotel room. Alex had one of his buddies from the Marine Corps that lived close, came by and saw him. They went next door to KFC to get some food. And I remember laying there in bed. I started making a live video, and I'm still like real pumped up from the day. My adrenaline's pumping, and I'm just pissed off, and I'm talking all sorts of shit. And then my Facebook feed gets cut, and they take my live video down, and then they take my ability to post down, and I just start seeing all my socials just going down. And but I'm starting to watch what's happening across social media, and they're reconvening, the House, and they're getting them in there to get ready to finish this process out on January 6th. Then I'm just watching the news, and I'm seeing them like show videos of us on the West Terrace. And they're using words like terrorism, insurrection, coup, domestic terrorists. And I'm just like, oh my God, I am in a lot of trouble. And that's when I decided that as soon as we wake up in the morning, we are leaving. And so we did. I know some people went back into D.C. and wanted to see things that were going on. Not us. As soon as that sun popped up and we woke our eyes up, we got in the truck and hauled ass back to Texas as quickly and safely as possible. And then I was so nervous and paranoid because I'm starting to see everything pop up online. I'm starting to get people send me messages and threats and everything else. And starting getting the black vans that starting to show up outside the SUVs outside of my house. And I live in a gated neighborhood. And so when I started seeing people, come through a gated neighborhood that are not supposed to be there and parking outside of my house, I knew something was up. So I started getting real paranoid. And then sure enough, 12 days later, boom, they're flashbanging my house. And I wasn't there. I was in Oklahoma at my in-laws' house for the weekend. And so thankfully I wasn't there. And I woke up at 5:30 a.m., went to use the restroom, laid back down, and within 5 minutes, my Ring doorbell camera was going off. And I just looked at it and saw that the FBI was stacked on my door, the SWAT team. And I'm just like, I freaked out. I knew I was in trouble. And, the rest is history after that. Yeah, we just, I came down. I drove 4 hours down that day. I got an attorney. I waited like 2 more hours, 2.5 hours. They were in my house for a couple hours before I even made a move. And I had to get a hold of an attorney first before I ever did anything. And so he's like, drive back down. turn yourself in, don't say a word. And I was like, all right, I'm on my way back down. And so that I drove in from Oklahoma, met the FBI in Tyler in Smith County, and then they arrested me, and I went through this process, this just crazy process, and was no bonded. And that initial process here in Texas, I started out having my due process rights violated right here in Smith County in the Eastern District of Texas. My extradition hearing was waived when I didn't agree to waive my extradition hearing. So I was supposed to be giving an extradition hearing out of Texas, and that is why like Ken Paxton, Greg Abbott, and Mike Lindell at one point in time were starting to make a big deal about it because according to the Texas state constitution, we are supposed to be giving extradition hearings out of the state of Texas as Texas citizens, and that was not provided for us by the federal government. And so that issue was when midterms came around, was later dropped because Mike Lindell apparently told Ken Paxton and that he didn't want him to lose the election by focusing on Jan Sixers, and so they ghosted my parents and ghosted my wife. Ken Paxton's office did because of apparently what Mike Lindell said. And so Mike Lindell, if you're listening to this, I have a bone to pick with you and Ken Paxton, because y'all ghosted my wife and you ghosted my parents for political reasons. And I would like you to answer for that. And so I'm going to get into more of that later on in my campaign and later on in the summer. I've got the proof of that, and I'm really going to hammer them later on. But make sure to clip this because I want to be able to put this out. Like, y'all did my wife and my parents dirty. You left them hanging. You told them, you gave them a meeting, and then all of a sudden you just ghosted them, canceled them, and because it wasn't convenient for your political needs. You're going to have to answer for that later to me.
Unfortunately, that's it's not isolated. Unfortunately, I think, frankly, less than a handful of public servants, or in the case of maybe Lindell, activists, I think less than a handful of people genuinely gave a shit about us, and most, as you said, thought we were inconvenient. Of course, I'm glad that they're around now to kiss our ass.
And they definitely are, and there's so many of them, and to the point I was very angry at first, and a few of them I did lash out at, especially ones that were close to me, because I was like, where the fuck were you? And why do you think that we're all buddy now? Why do you think you just get to walk back into my life after ignoring my wife and kids for 4 years and acting like I didn't exist? And so I did that to a couple of people, and then I just let it go, because I also have to realize that there was probably an immense amount of stress and pressure put on these people by the feds that they weren't meant to handle. They didn't ask for, and they didn't know the full story. They may not have known what I really did. They may have been told a story that wasn't true, but they didn't know. Like, that doesn't excuse their actions, but I'm not going to continue to hold and harbor hate for even like people in my neighborhood. Like, I got people in my neighborhood here. The ones that told on me moved, but there's a couple still here in my neighborhood, and like I really see that they're ashamed and embarrassed of themselves. And now I try to let them off the hooks and I wave at them and stuff. When I first got here, it was a full fuck you to them, though. Like, you kept me from my kids for 4 years. Like, you wrote statements on me. You gave pictures of my house to the FBI. Like, you were working against me. But now it's just, hey, how you doing? And I know that they have to look at me and my kids over here in the yard playing and know what they did. And so I don't go associate with them. I don't go hang out with them, but I do smile and wave and keep it cordial. And,
you preempted me. That was actually going to be my next question. Obviously you had Marcus and 1% Watchdog. You had these informants who were kind of, I don't know, shadowing you, grooming you, or entrapping you perhaps. And then you also, as you had mentioned, your own live streams were immediately taken down. Clearly people were, like you said, were either, I don't know, sending you threats, or so people, you had been identified or had been fingered by less than insignificant numbers. And then, of course, pretty quickly you said that you saw, surveillance around your house. But since you had mentioned your neighbors maybe dropping, dropping a dime on you, how were you actually officially, at least, identified after January 6th?
So I was officially identified. I think it was the video of me spraying the officers, and I think it was by that dude BG on the scene who took that video of me. And I want to say something real quick. I know we talked about tangents. I didn't think I was going to go off on any tangents, but I want to go off on a tangent real quick. Whoever at BG on the scene is, you fed motherfucker, you're at every big event. To me, you're just like Marcus. And really, because you were at January 6th, I wouldn't be surprised if you and Marcus and 1%, like y'all run in the same crowds and work with the same people. That dude BG on the scene is in every big event with rioting, with federal agents in the crowd and trapping people. So BG on the scene, you piece of shit. I think that you're the biggest fed of them all. And I think that you're just the same as Marcus and 1%. With that being said, what was the question again?
Well, I think that applies to Taylor Hanson and a lot of these quote-unquote indie journalists that are always conveniently at the same spot. Or, I noticed a lot at the mouth of the tunnel, there's a lot of photographers literally standing not even half a foot behind someone taking pictures of them or filming them. So I think a lot of that was more choreographed than people realized. I think the whole day was. But
let me give you a crazy story that I've been waiting to tell, and I think it gets back to the handful of people. It's like I know some people took a couple months ago, and I don't remember why. They took a stance against Julie Kelly, and I was the first one to go out there and say, "You can't say nothing bad about that woman to me. She took a hard stance in our favor when nobody else would, when everybody else refused to." And so when it comes to somebody like Julie Kelly, I'm going to have her back unless she does something like completely outrageous that I just can't stand behind. But she hasn't. And so people like that, loyalty means a lot to me. And so and disloyalty will get you gone quicker than anything else after what we've been through. And so I thank people like Julie Kelly that always looked into things, and she was fair, she was honest, and she gave us the time of day when she didn't have to, but she knew something was there, and she followed her guts and she followed her instincts. And anyways, I just want to give her that praise and that thanks as well. When we start talking about these suspicious actors and these government agents and what was happening that day and what happened afterwards, when I was in prison, thankfully I was able to get a hold to a prison phone, and I was able to keep up with times and modern things going on. And so I could get on X and on Facebook, and now I'm not sitting there posting. I'm not going live. I'm not even really messaging anybody. I don't think I messaged you on there until 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, when I was when everybody's trying to figure out what is about to happen. To the point to where I didn't care if I got caught on that phone. I'm trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. If I got to sit in the shoe for the next 3 weeks after I figure out I'm getting pardoned, then so be it, And so I'm trying to figure out, am I going home or not? And so, Christmas Eve, I remember I had already been sent over to the low from the medium, and I'm on Twitter at this point, and after I got over there, I think it was on my birthday, December 6th of 2024, I made my first post. And it was something about Judge Hogan, and I think I was showing where he admitted on the record that my due process rights were violated. And I have that, and I was talking with my dad about that last night. I was like, that's like a badge of honor. It's like earning the Eagle Globe and Anchor. Nobody can take that from me. You can't take that a judge had to admit on the record that my due process rights were violated. So when somebody comes to me and starts telling me about deportations and due process, I don't want to fucking hear it, because I have the paperwork the black and white from a federal judge in Washington, D.C., talking about my and my brother's due process rights being violated. Don't tell me about your illegal friend who was over here trafficking fucking children, you sick fuck.
Yeah.
Actually, it just makes me very, very angry that that the two would even be compared, January 6th and what's going on, right now. So on Christmas Eve, I get a random message on Twitter, and I'm not going to say their name because I really don't like this account, and I feel like they really were trying to bait me and troll me into a lot of things, but they showed me and opened my eyes to something that I greatly, greatly appreciate. And that was something that I had been asking the government for years. We had been accusing Marcus DiPiola of being a confidential human source because in my paperwork, I received a piece of paper that was redacted, that was a note written to the FBI after January 6th. And it was telling information like, hey, I saw this person do this on camera. And, oh, yeah, I have another person that I know was there. He's my friend. His name is Ryan Nichols. His phone number is this. He had body armor. Well, I didn't tell anybody I was bringing body armor. Marcus knew I was bringing body armor because he told me that I should bring it, right? And so it said he had body armor. He served in the Marine Corps, and oh yeah, please don't tell him this because I may have to work with him again someday. Whew. That was what gave it away for me, was because his name was redacted, so I didn't know who wrote it. So I'm having to put context clues together. And so also the name that he wrote inside of the redacted form about the other guy was the guy that he took a video of that day breaking through the fucking crowd, or breaking through the bike racks. And so I was able to piece those two together, that he filmed that guy, and he's also talking about working with me. So I'm like, well, is he talking about working in the sense of with hurricanes, or is he talking about like, actually I have to work as an informant against this guy again someday? And to me, it didn't matter because I was able to connect the dots. At that point in time, I knew exactly what was what. And it was really, when I connected it, I was in cell 10 down there. It was nighttime. And I believe it was evening around 7 or 8 p.m. Some people were in, some people were out. We had Abdullah inside of there. It was an easy night. And I remember going through my discovery, and I saw that, and I freaked the fuck out. Because it was in that moment that I knew I had been set up. And, it still took me a year after that to get out of there. Over a year. After I found that information out. And then Christmas Eve, let me back up a little bit. Before I pled guilty, we were getting ready to go to trial, and we had a good stack of evidence and what we felt like was the video evidence in our favor. But I felt that we needed a little bit more. Joe was ready to go to trial because he was like, Ryan, I can explain this story to a jury, and I can get one person. And I wanted to believe him, and I still believe that he could have done that. To me, I just couldn't take that risk because I wasn't able to connect all the dots and actually give a definitive, like, hey, this guy actually is a confidential human source, and so until I could give a definitive on that, I didn't want to go to trial and just say, well, I think he is based off of my hunches, of everything that I put together. That wasn't good enough to me. And so, we did put all this stuff out there about 1% Watchdog, about Marcus, and about Ray Epps and other people in the crowd. And when we did that, Judge Lambert sided with us, and he told the government that they had to produce this information. And it was a huge win for me. And I was at home when it happened, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And that's when the government started working, and they started wanting to work with me on a plea deal then. And Joe was like, Ryan, we're right over the top of him. Like, and, you know, I just wanted it to go away at that point. And, we just didn't have the proof. And so I remember the government wrote back to their response, and I was like, let's see the government's response to what they had to say about Marcus and 1%. They responded back to me that not only did they not know these guys and that they weren't government agents, but that I should be ashamed of myself for trying to get good men indicted and for not taking responsibility for my actions, and that like me saying these things is like would constitute like not accepting responsibility. Like that's how they tried to turn it against me. Like if I'm saying this, then maybe I'm not accepting responsibility. And so I'm just like, I cannot believe that's, you know, and that's the twisted games that the government plays.
Right.
Is
it's a threat.
Though I'm 100% correct, like they gaslight me into thinking that I'm the one that's wrong and that I should be taking their deal for, you know, at that time it was 7 to 8.5 years is what I pled to. And, I was hoping to get, at the bottom guidelines, 72 months, you know, because I played to 72 to 87. And, but I pled, the way that I did it was I told Brad, because Brad started negotiating the plea deal for me. Joe was the pit bull working him over. Brad went and negotiated the deal and, was the cooler. And so when Brad went and talked to him, they were like, look, stack all the points on the 15-12 and don't make, you know, the guy go to prison and take the 111A and B. He'll take the 111A, give him an assault, stack all the points on the 15-12. Now, we did this because I knew that Trump was carrying the same charge. And so I knew that the possibility of it going to the Supreme Court and at least getting downgraded significantly and it having to do with me would probably be the same, or at least that's what I was hedging my bet on. And so I was like, at least I'll have the 111A. I will be eligible for the First Step Act. And if we can beat them at the Supreme Court, then, you know, most of this will go away. I'll actually be sitting at time served. And so, sure enough, the PSI came back, and bro, the PSI freaked the government out because I went and did everything. Back up a little bit. I went and did everything, answered my questions, did the little government's interview that you do with pre-trial and everything, or who is it? Probation. Like you have to go talk to them and pre-sentencing reports and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I did that, I got my pre-sentencing report back, and it came back to the same thing, 72 to 87, and I was cool with that because I'm like, okay, 72 to 87, I'm cool with it. Now I know the government's going to ask for more, and then the D.C. Appeals Court came out with the ruling that knocked, I think it was like 11 points or 14 points off of the 15-12. So before it even got up to the Supreme Court, the D.C. Appeals Court came back and said, yeah, you're correct. 11 or 14 of these points on this 15-12, they have to go away. And so it was, I forget exactly what type of enhancements they were, but it applied to both my assault and my 15-12. And so I'm like, holy shit. And so we went and looked at the PSR, or excuse me, it only applied to the 15-12, but the government on probation and who was calculating my points, they gave me time served, or they gave me under time served for the assault. And so I'm sitting at under time served for the assault, and I'm sitting at time served for the 15-12. And I'm asking Joe, like I call him on the phone, and he's like, bro, don't fucking talk over this phone. Don't say, I was like, fuck that. Do you see this? Do you see it? I'm about to go home. He says, stop fucking talking. And so, but I couldn't help it, you know, like I'm just like, dog, because the appeals court, what we had hedged our bet on worked. And so went from looking at 7 to 8.5 years to going home. And people in the DC gulag at that that point, because you were no longer around, and most of the guys had already gone, some of the guys that had been there from the beginning, when I got back and pulled this one off, they were like, well, fucking typical Ryan over here. And then, there was the other guys that had shown up, and they're like, who the fuck is this guy over here, working miracles and, like, signing 7 to 8.5 year plea deals and then beating them at the, at the appeals court and going home. What are you doing? And I was explaining to these guys, like, look, this is work that we have been putting in for years. This isn't something that we just started right now. This is a chess game that has been going on for years now. And I was proud of that because we threw the government for a loop. I get into sentencing, and, dog, I think I'm going home. I'm walking in and knowing that the D.C. appeals court has just basically set me up to walk in and go home after I just pled to go to prison for the next 7 to 8 years. And I know that sentencing starts in 5 minutes because they take me down to the dungeon and put me in the little back room right before you go into the courtroom. And he's like, hey, I'll bring you out in like 2 or 3 minutes. I was like, yes, sir, sounds good. Yes, ma'am, thank you. And they're like, just sit in the cage. So I sit in the cage. 2 minutes goes by, 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes goes by, 15 minutes goes by, and then all of a sudden I can start hearing yelling, and it just gets louder and louder and louder. I'm hearing down there, I'm hearing this Brooklyn cussing, and I'm like, this is not good. I'm down there handcuffed. My family's flown in for sentencing. I'm about to go out and get sentenced, and my attorney's out there cussing somebody out in the courtroom, and come to find out, Joe comes through the back door, and you have the marshals that are sitting right there, and they're like, sir, he's like, get the fuck out of my way. And he comes over to me, and they step back, and he's like, these motherfuckers are trying to fuck you, and I'm not going to let them fuck you. I just went out there and had it out with them in front of God and everybody, and I just let them know that they're not going to fuck you today. And I'm like, what is going on? And he was like, they are trying to rescind your plea deal right now. They are saying that they are ready to take this to trial because, we beat them. We beat them. We fucking beat them. And they're mad that we fucking beat them. He's saying this. They can hear him out in the courtroom, and I know that Lambert can hear him, has to be able to hear him, but they know what's going on. They went in there and strong-armed me right at sentencing when my family had just flown all the way across the country. Joe had just come from New York. They walk into the courtroom and said, we don't agree with how probation did the sentencing, and we know that we missed the filing deadline, and technically, per the law, there's nothing that we can do, but we're going to argue in front of the judge right now, and if you don't agree to take these 4 points right here and add them on, we're going to take you to trial, and you're going to get 15 fucking years. And that was the option that was sent back to me, was, Ryan, they say to take this, and basically, Joe was like, look, the judge still has discretion to go down to where the levels were, or he could go to that new guideline range, but he's like, I think that we got him. And so I'm just like, I have a split second to make a decision right here that really could affect the rest of my life. And so I got my family out there, and I'm like, in that moment, I see the way that Joe is manhandling these people, and Brad's right behind him manhandling these people. And so I was like, all right, let's go. And he's like, all right, let's go. And so we go out there, and what I didn't know, what had just taken place beforehand, is Joe had done all his research on all three of the prosecutors that came out there from the government. And so when they said that they wanted to do this and rescind it and this and that, Joe went to town working them over about who they are, who their wife is, where their wife works, their past case history, what they fought for the left, and if these things are okay for the left, then if your wife fights for this, then why do you think it's okay to come in here and do it to other people? And so, and he's like, and you work on the Innocence Project with me in New York. You should be ashamed and embarrassed of yourself. You think this is okay for my client to be in solitary confinement for prolonged periods of time and be suffering from PTSD? Me and you worked on cases together about prolonged periods of confinement in New York, and now you're in here doing this? You should be ashamed of yourself. And then Rosha, that fat hippopotamus bitch looks over and starts trying to talk to Joe, and Joe's just like waves his hand at her like, you don't even rate getting to talk to me, woman. You've just been a fucking asshole and a pain in the ass, and you've not done anything positive for us the entire time. You get nothing. And so he worked them over, and we went out there to sentencing, and they came out there fighting pretty hard against me. Joe came out there and whipped their ass. I got up there and I apologized and said I was sorry to the victims of January 6th. And a lot of people has taken that for me getting up there and just simping to the government. And that's not true. I got up there and apologized to the victims of January 6th. Who are the victims of January 6th? We're the victims of January 6th. You're the victims of January 6th. Ashley Babbitt, Kevin Greason, Benjamin Phillips, Roseanne Boylan, and all those other innocent men and women inside of there, Victoria White, those people are the victims of January 6th. Okay? My children and my wife are the victims of January 6th. Matthew Perna and Jerry Perna are the victims of January 6th. Now, yes, there's some police up there that are victims of January 6th. There are some lawmakers that are victims of January 6th. There are some residents of D.C. that are victims of January 6th, too. But make no mistake, those victims aren't just on one side. And so that's why I said what I said. Everything that I said was crafted and intentional with everything that I put out there. And I would recommend anytime somebody reads something from me, especially if I'm going into sentencing or if I'm going in to give a speech or if I'm going to post an initial post about something or if I do a big video subject, I'm not going in there just spouting off based off of emotion only. It's going to be facts and data driven and evidence based driven. But I will use emotion, but it will be facts and data driven with emotion behind it. And January 6th taught me that. Being in the legal battles the last 4 years taught me that. Being in prison taught me that. You deal in black and white. You deal in facts only. You don't deal in emotion and he said, she said. That shit'll get you killed. I watch dudes get stabbed over that stuff in prison. And so yeah, it's we deal with facts now, and that's what I'm leaning into now, and that's how we beat them, Tim. We beat these people with facts, but it was just like Trump does. I noticed that he does something on stage, which is over and over and over. We always would listen to him, remember, and we would think he's going to get up there and say something different this time. Surely he's going to mention us, and no, that wasn't the time for it. He had to go up there and hammer the same facts over and over and over for years in order to get it through people's heads about what happened. And so we did the same thing for years, and I think that's the only reason that people today still remember and still know certain names and certain things that happened, because we said it over and over and over and over again, and that was our place. That was our position in history and in time to do. And that, there's not one thing that won President Trump the election, but everybody had their place in it, and that was our place.
Yeah. I'm like laughing to myself. I'm remembering all the times people are like, Trump didn't say my name. but
my God, dude. There would be some meltdowns in there. Like, there's literally like yelling out the door, mad and shit, yelling through the vent. And, but I guess we look back at that now and we remember that we had to gossip. We had nothing else.
Well, I remember the times when we would have vent talks, and we actually were saying the same thing back then that you're saying right now. A lot of us were like, I think this needed to happen, at least the situation we were in particular, because nobody else, 100%
it had to happen because, look, Trump gets back in office, right? We knew Antifa was going to rear its ugly head again. We saw it coming from a mile away. But now people are not putting up with it because they're like, wait a second, you didn't put up with these guys doing it. And so if we didn't put up with these guys doing it and demanded law and order, we're going to demand the same from y'all now. And so, yeah, like I'm seeing it now come to fruition 4 years later, and I'm like, okay, like that did have to happen. Like we had to go suffer because we could deal with it. We were the ones that could deal with it. God knew that, and we dealt with it. We got our pardon, and but we were able to be used as like, hey, there's the benchmark. If you want to say that this is okay, well then what's good for the goose, like Pete would always say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah. If he was always like, every time I say that now, I think of Pete because I remember him telling the officers that. He would tell the U.S. Marshals that would come in there that. He would tell anybody that. He'd call out and do an interview, tell them that. He'd tell the judge that. Well, Your Honor, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? And I'm like, damn, Pete. But Pete just, he knew, just like you knew, just like Shane knew. There was many people in there that they just knew you can't do certain things, even though they did them anyways.
Yeah. I want to backtrack a bit. So you had talked about how you had seen, obviously, again, your house was being raided. If you could you take me through the process of diesel therapy? Describe your arrest and describe the journey, for lack of a better term, that you went on from that point all the way to the DC jail.
Yeah, so when I first got arrested, they took me to the Smith County Jail, and I was in the Smith County Jail. It was 47 and 1, and that means that you were in a room for 47 hours, and then you could come out for 1 hour to take a shower, call your family, and then you go back in for 47 hours. I did that for the first 9 days, and if you've never been in solitary confinement, that damn near drive you crazy, and not damn near, it will drive you crazy. And after the first 9 days, I remember they were doing a TB test on me, tuberculosis test, and so when you do these TB tests, you're about to get moved. And so did this test, I'm about to get moved, or that's what everybody's telling me, and sure enough, I get moved, and they drive me up. I think I'm going all the way to Oklahoma City and getting on a plane and flying to D.C. right then. I think that's how it works. No, I drive up to Fannin County, which is about 2.5 hours, 2 hours northwest of where I was, and they stop at a jail. And I'm like, what are we doing here? They're like, you're sitting here overnight. And I'm like, well, it's 10 a.m. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, we got a plane to catch. And I don't know how it works. And this guy's like, sit down, boy. Like, you have no idea what's going on here. And so we sat in the, there was like a holding cell. There was like 8 of us in there. And we had mats, and we just sat in there overnight and laid in there, and Alex was in there, and I met up with him there. And then the next morning we got in the van, and that's when they drove us to Grady County. And we were in Grady County, and we were there for 5 weeks, and we got stopped there because of the snowstorm in February of 21, that giant winter storm that came through. And so we were there for 5 weeks, and that was a nightmare. That's a little 30-man room. Everybody's all in the same room. It's a very, very small room, 2 showers, 2 toilets, and that was a nightmare inside of there. And so we were there for 5 weeks, and everybody inside of there was mixed in. So like you had guys that were not sentenced, guys that were sentenced, guys that were doing life, guys that were doing a year, and so you were really like in the melting pot. And it was extremely dangerous in those places, especially if you had never been in jail before and you didn't know jail rules or prison rules. Like, those guys are living by a completely different set of rules and a different code. And so if you don't know that and you cross them, you can easily get hurt or killed. And so at those times, nobody was telling me how to jail or how to prison, or Alex, or that's where I met Bobby, and that's where I also met Troy Smocks, where he came in the pod over there. And so And Troy, I knew he was an informant the first day that I met him. And if I could go back and ever get recorded phone calls from my attorney, which, or at least like something written, he would admit to this. I know Bonnie does. She remembers. I called her. Troy got into the pod, and he said he was a colonel. And I said, Colonel, okay, cool. So everybody started calling Colonel, calling this, and so I started asking him questions. And it's questions that, an Army colonel should know.
Right.
And so he didn't know these, and immediately, I just knew, this guy's full of shit right here. And I went over and got on the phone with Bonnie, because he started saying, hey, I've got a nonprofit organization that does emergency cleanups and spills in disaster areas. Like, he comes off the top of his head with this shit, right? And I am the founder of Rescue the Universe. Our nonprofit was going into disaster zones and doing hurricane search and rescue, missing person search and rescue, tornado search and rescue. And so for him to come up to me and say that he's a colonel, which I was in the Marine Corps, tell me he's a colonel, but not be able to answer any basic military questions. And then he tell me that he has a disaster recovery nonprofit, just like me as well. And, that we should get together and do some things. So I said, all right, cool. Well, what's the name of your nonprofit? He said, this is the name of it. He spits off this name. I said, cool. I waited about an hour. I went over and got on the phone with Bonnie. I said, look this information up right now. Troy Smocks. He has a nonprofit. It's called this. Boom, boom, boom. She started looking him up. She's like, Ryan, this guy, the only thing that comes up about this guy is that he is a bad dude that's serving prison, serving time in prison. And she's like, I don't think that we're talking about the same guy. And I was like, well, what about the nonprofit? She's like, nothing comes up. And I was like, well, look in the military records. She was like, nothing comes up. And I'm like, this guy here it is, right here. I hadn't even got to DC yet. I haven't even gotten in front of a judge in DC. And here we are, got informants in the pod trying to ask us questions. The same things that you would see on 60 Days In, I lived it. These people actually do these things. And so if I tell people, I often tell them, folks, if you think that they'll do that for a show, they'll send people into a pod for 60 days just for a show to find out about how much tramadol they're fucking peddling through there, or how many extra ibuprofens that they're pulling in as contraband, because really that's all they're doing. Ibuprofen, tramadol, and what's the stuff that they take, the orange stuff? Can't think of the name right now. You know what I'm talking about? For the opiates. What's that shit called?
The only thing I'm really familiar with is people doing deuce.
Suboxone.
Suboxone. Yeah.
And so, if they'll send undercover informants into a random jail pod in the middle of America over subs or extra pills, or for fighting, or to see where some little gang activity is, what do you think that they will do to us in our situation when they were trying to unseat the president of the United States? Do you not think that they will go to every and all lengths? And so I often told people, if you guys think that they won't send somebody like Troy Smocks in here for an entire year like they did him, where is Troy now? Can anybody find him? Does anybody know where this guy is? Or has he gone back off into witness protection, and is he looking to honeypot the next victim?
Yeah, he's disappeared into obscurity somewhere in Texas, probably.
Yeah, and so he tried to come out and I think hide behind this and do more, and he got rooted out very quickly. But I challenge people, go find me Troy Smocks. Where is he at? What's he doing? Because everything that he said he was doing on that day, he lied. And even more so, I think that we don't give it enough thought, but a lot of the division that happened in the pod was undercover, stoked by Troy Smocks as well. Also, there are things that people like Jake and what's that kid's name? Thomas that young kid's name. He likes Jake.
Thomas, who likes Jake.
The other guys who know they'll know who I'm talking about. Anyways,
is this that I'm an orphan, so trust me thing?
Yes. And so now, I can confirm the whole, the orphan thing and the things that he claims did happen to him as a child, that did happen. But that's what Isaac Thomas is his name. We had to tell Isaac, because I heard Isaac through the wall talking on the phone, because when we had them tablets, you could have them through the wall. So Isaac was putting out information to people like, I don't know who this guy is, but they call him the General. Mm. You remember that guy?
Yeah, he's a...
Okay, so character. He tries talking to me on X and everything. I don't even fucking respond to him. So you got, like, the General, and then you had his attorney, Metcalf. And so, like, he would call out to these people, but tell them blatant lies. And he'd be like, hey, I just got physically assaulted in the pod. But that wasn't true. That didn't happen. I was in the pod. I watched what happened. Like, did you, I guess you could call it get verbally harassed? Yeah, you got verbally harassed for fucking lying, And so, yeah, you got harassed. But this kid, he had a lot of mental problems. And obviously with what had happened to him growing up. But you got guys like that sending out bad information to bad actors outside of the jail, or you got Troy Smocks inside of there and stoking division. And there were when we say that there was bad actors and feds in the pod, they were. Whether they were working from outside and using people within, or whether they were actually within, they were there.
Yeah. You had mentioned Geeswine and Alex. Did you meet anyone else in your transit or in Grady? I feel like a lot of people cross paths in Grady at some point.
So Grady, we did. So on March the 8th, we left Grady, and that's where I met Megs and almost every. I think Sable. No, Sable got there a week after me. But I remember a whole bunch of us came there and got there on the 9th, the night of the 8th and the 9th. It's like 25 of us that came from Grady County, 25 or 30 of us. There was a whole lot of us that came from Grady County. But I remember Meg specifically because they black boxed him, and he was like, he's too big to be getting black boxed. And so they're like, you have an assault on an officer. And he's like, no, I don't. And he was like, yeah, they do. We have it right here. And I'm thinking, oh shit, I have an assault on an officer, but maybe they think that's me. And so I ain't saying nothing. And so they didn't black box me, but they black boxed Megs. And so he got black boxed all the way to DC. And I remember by the time he got to DC, he's hurting bad. And he gets over there, and they finally take the black box off. And he's like, motherfucker, man. Like, you know his voice. Like, I don't have an assault. I don't know what they did that for.
Right.
And I was like, well, I do, and they didn't black box me. And he's like, you son of a bitch. And so, yeah, I remember Megs, and I remember Cash on the plane. And, I remember, like, us getting on the plane. I remember being catcalled for the first time in my life. I'd never been catcalled. But I got on the plane, and like the women inmates are all in the front, and the men are on the back. And so I remember like going and walking on the plane, and just trashy ass women, and they're like, "Hey baby, oh look here, I can't wait to mount that motherfucker right there. I'll hold you." I was like, "God damn, these women are fucking crazy." I'm like, ching 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 ching. I'm walking fast through the back of the plane, and get me out of here, And so. Yeah, I remember getting on the plane, getting over there, and getting off on the runway, and I remember there being rifles everywhere. They had officers lined up outside all on the runway, and what's crazy is they didn't have that much security when I went back 3.5 years later. But when they had that plane full of Jan Sixers, Bro, they had rifles staged all around the runway and everything else, men and watching with rifles. I was like, this is crazy. It's something like you would see out of a cartel movie, you know, and I noticed the difference in that because after I got sentenced and started my process of going to prison, and it wasn't like that again. And so I knew that that was out of the ordinary, and it was not something that they normally do. So Grady County for 5 weeks, and then fly over into flew like 4 different places, 5 different places that day, and finally once we got to our spot in Virginia or West Virginia, and then so we got in
Northern Neck.
Yes, so we went to Northern Neck overnight, correct, and I remember getting in there, and that place was different immediately. Like, you know, it had the bars on it, on the doors, at least from what I know when we first went in. And I was like, I don't fucking like this place. I definitely don't want to be here in this place. And, you know, you really get to every jail, and it's like that. And then you really think, like, no jail is good. You know, there's no jail that's going to be nice. No prison is going to be comfortable. Yeah. And so, but you always think, like, you go to a new place, like, oh man, something's got to be a little bit better here. And so we were there overnight, and they had us in a room. And when they had us in this room, we all staged in there on our mats and then slept, and they woke us up the next morning like 4 a.m., gave us our sack meals, and then drove us into D.C. And so I remember we got to D.C. and walked in, did everything inside. At the front, you know, with the processing in the end dock, and then they started giving us our mats and stuff and telling us, like, you know, we're walking in single line. And I remember these officers having what I thought was personal phones, but I guess it was work phones with the security team, and filming us, you know, and like taking little personal videos and like acting like I couldn't see it or I wasn't seeing it, but like I do videos for a living, you know, like that's what I did. So I see when somebody's turning that thing at an angle. I see when you're trying to catch the light the right way. You know, I see when you're trying to turn it up versus turning it sideways for your short. You know, and so I caught these things. I'm like, dude, I'm fucking being paraded down here like a zoo animal right now. Yeah. And I remember getting down to the pod, and one guy was like trying to like get up there in the line next to me, and I'm like, the fuck you doing? Like, I knew Alex was behind me. And so I asked the officer, I was like, hey, can we pick who we sell up with? Because I don't want to sell with one of these weird dudes if I know one of these other dudes. He's like, oh, you ain't got to worry about that. And I was like, all right, cool. And I'm thinking, okay, like that means, yes, I can sell it with who I want. So we get down there, and they say, give me the first one. I was the first one in line, and they took me down there to sell one. And I'm looking behind me like somebody's coming. And then by the time I look behind me, that fucking door closed. And I'm realizing, oh shit, I'm in here alone. And that's when we're like, hey, is somebody coming in? They're like, no, these are single man sales. And that's when like it hits you like, oh shit, I'm in here alone. Like, and so that was the first night. Like, you just try to go to sleep. You sleep for a couple days, and then you can't sleep anymore, you know. And then you just got to start dealing with reality, and then that reality set in.
Yeah, so it's funny you're taking me back to the beginning, because it's like, it's not only isolation, it's ignorance. It's like you don't know anything. You can't. I don't know about you, but I was barely able to get any phone calls because for me, the marshals didn't. They didn't want people to know where they were going. So
right.
They like the jail would like, you know, basically like dick you around. Oh yeah, you'll get a call soon. This, that, the other thing.
Well, when we first got there, what was the caseworker's name?
I don't even think I had one when I first. Oh, in DC.
Yeah.
In DC,
forgot her name, but it was the lady. But anyways, when we first got there, I couldn't even get a phone call for the first 9 days because you have to wait to see the case manager. You remember that? Like, you got to see the case manager, and then they put your the numbers in, and then like once she sees you, well, she waited for like 7 days, 8 days. And so it was like the 9th day that I was there. I'm trying to come out and use my phone, and I was finally able to use it. And so, like, 9 days. Well, your family just don't know where you're at. And then, like, that's after I had arrived, plus the day or two of travel, and so it's almost 2 weeks. Your family doesn't know where you're at all. They just don't know where you're at. You're somewhere in the country. Hopefully you're not dead, and not in a hospital or somewhere, stabbed up or hit over the head with a fucking lock. And so, yeah, that's, I finally was able to call, but, we were very calm and patient, much more patient than anybody else in our situation would have been, because anybody else on the other side of that jail or anywhere else in America comes in, they're not waiting 9 days to get a phone call.
Right.
They're going to start kicking those doors, throwing food and even shit and piss out of those doors. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's humane. But I'm saying that people will go to great lengths to make sure that they can talk to their family and get their basic human rights and needs met. And so we didn't know we didn't know the grievance process. We didn't know about kicking doors. We didn't know about acting like an animal. And not proud of that, but I am happy to say that, like, we were getting our constitutional rights violated, and so at some points we had to act like an animal so these animals could understand that we were not happy with them treating us like that. And that's like the best way that I can explain it.
When did you first get to DC, and how long were you in C2A before you got to C2B?
I got to DC on March 9th, 2021, and I was in C2A for like 14, 16, 18 days, something like that, like 2 to 3 weeks.
And that's when you first went into the cell right above
15. 34. Correct.
So you got there. You're in the same conditions as pretty much everyone else. It's 23-1. When did you finally get onto the detail team? And what was your motivation for? I mean, I think I know the answer. I think I know the answer for everybody. But
yeah, motivation was getting out of that fucking cell, and my motivation was to see if I could do it. I remember watching Munchel be out on the other side, and I'm like, dude, that dude has a sweet job right there. He's out of his cell all day, or at least most of the days. And some days, like, they left him locked up, but like, you're out of your cell at least 100% more of the time than everybody else is, and so I'm like, I want that job. And so when we got to the other side, I saw that Cleve and Curzio were doing it. And then I noticed, like, Curzio would have days where he's doing it by himself, and I'm like, I bet he needs some help. And even if he doesn't, I'm going to offer it because I want out of this fucking cell. And so I basically wrote a resume, like a job application, and on a blank piece of paper that would fit perfectly inside of my window, I wrote, Dear Sir or Ma'am, I would like to volunteer my services and to be on the detail team. I'm extremely task-oriented. Like, I went, like, completely into it. I follow rules the first time I am told. I will not cause any problems or commotions. I will lead and listen as told. I look forward to serving the jail, the inmates, the officers, and my fellow peers inside of here to the best of my ability. Like, I went fucking all out on that, and I left it in my door. And I would notice, like, because they would do their rounds every 30 minutes, and they'd come by and they'd look at it, and they'd look at it, and they'd look at it. And sometimes they wouldn't look at it, and sometimes they would. And after about 3 days, I remember Hayes opened my door, and he was like, you want to work, Nichols? And I was like, yes, sir, I do. He was like, get your shoes on and come downstairs. And it was Cleve was taking new meds, and they had him on some meds, like, it just knocked his ass out, and he couldn't get back up.
Yeah.
And so he was like, you're going to be my number 3 man on the detail. And that took me about 2.5 to 3 weeks after I got over there to finally get on the detail. I think it was it was the end of April because Alex had just got bonded out at the end of April, beginning of May, and I was on the detail team like a week before that. And so we're talking about the last week of April was when I got on the detail, and then really last week of April was when I got on detail because I remember talking to Alex for a couple of days through the door on the outside, and then boom, he was gone and bonded out. Yeah, it worked. And so then I remember people would ask me, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? And so at first I didn't want to tell them. And then I remember Cash was like, he'd be like, come here, my brother. And I come to the door. He was like, how you going to be out and then me not be out and you think that's cool? And I was like, damn, you're right. And he said, so go give me that paper real quick so I can put it up too. And I said, all right, I will. And I went over there and I gave it to him. And I remember like he wrote it down and he put it up. And I was like, let's see how this works. Because what I didn't want to happen, it was scarcity mindset. I didn't want to come out and then like get put back in because Cash wants to come out. I'm like, I ain't going back in that fucking room now. And so Cash finally, like, it works real quick. You know, Hayes sees it and was like, all right, cool, boom, popped you out. And so I'm like, all right, cool. So Megs is like, hey, man, bring that fucking paper over here. And so I bring that paper over to Megs. And, the rest is history. After, like, what was it, like 4 or 5 more months after that, we had, like, 8 or 9 detail. And then it's just...
I remember at, like, the height of it, while I was there, like, at the height, I remember I'm like, there's another one. It's like half the pod was on the detail team. I'm like, who isn't on detail?
And then it was easy at that point to be like, tell the African, because we would treat the African with respect. Even though that a lot of them were being disrespectful, you still treat them with respect because you got to play the game with them. I hate playing the game, but playing the game is what got everybody out, during COVID. And eventually it's like, come on, Azib, like, half the fucking pod is out. Like, let the other guys out. Okay, just if I say go back in, everybody go in. All right, not a problem. And then boom, we start popping doors. And so that I know we would, sometimes, people be like, you fucking talking to the law and doing this and doing that. Like, that shit didn't work in prison, but it worked in the Jan 6 pod, and we could talk to the law and get everybody out.
Yeah, and let me ask you this: since you brought up the African, I get different answers from different people. Do you think who in terms of like the guards, like the whole thing was a shit sandwich? Some people say that the Africans were told to bully us by the African American higher brass. Who do you think was more hostile towards us, the natives or the African?
Okay, I would like to add a third section in there. The native females.
Mm.
Okay, it wasn't even a lot of times the natives or the Africans as much as it was the local female bull dykes. They were liberal as hell, loved Joe Biden, were deep in the establishment there, were obviously LGBTQ, liberal voters, hated Donald Trump, hated us. And they were all the ones that were promoted as lieutenants and captains, and it was the gay female lieutenants and captains and majors that were probably holding work visas over the heads of those Africans and say, you do what we say or you're going back to the motherland.
Hmm.
And those guys were scared for their lives, more than likely. Now, some of those, I will say, like Sewanee, I watched that man change. And I watched him go from treating us bad to treating us like human beings and talking to us. And actually, I say he didn't treat us bad. He was robotic with us. He wasn't good, but he wasn't as bad as everybody else. But I watched Sewanee after 3 years would come in there and shake your hand and not wear those stupid gloves anymore and not wear that stupid mask. I couldn't even recognize him when I went back the second time because he wasn't wearing the mask. He's like, hey,
3 face shields. Yeah.
Yeah, not 3 face shields and mask and combat boots, And but come to find out, like Sewanee had gone and done his he had done his homework on people, and he found out the truth and realized these guys aren't bad. And Sewanee, as crazy as he was sometimes, and he got worked up. I remember Mink. Well, I remember him and Mink would go at it, and I remember him and Mink went at it one time, and I remember he cussed for the first time. I'd never heard Sewanee cuss ever, and I forget what he said. He said, "Shit you too." Yeah. He said, no, Mink, fuck you, shit you too. And I was like, shit you too? Oh, no. And I just died, because it was funny. And it was funny to hear Sewanee clap back at Mink. And Mink, I'm not going to speak for him. I'll let Mink say it for himself. But I think Mink respected Sewanee more that day for finally having the balls to clap back at him, and we laughed about it after that. You remember when Sewanee said shit you too, and me and just Mink would start laughing about it. And, that was just part of the Gulag experience. And, some of those officers held grudges, and some of them came in hearing what they heard on the media and then making their own decisions. And I appreciate them for that. But there are some in there, like Hayes, is a piece of shit. And that I watched physically abuse inmates, not even from our pod, from other pods, and I commit felonies that when I'm elected for Congress, Hayes, you're going to have to answer for that. And so when I'm elected to Congress, I'm walking back in the D.C. jail, and every one of you are getting investigated, and there's nothing you're going to do to stop me. And so I hope that gets heard by Hayes, because Hayes and all Dandy and all the rest of the little cronies over there, Robinson, all those dudes that are over there that are openly assaulting guys, I get it. You got guys that are bad inside of there, but they have taken it overboard to where it's a pleasure for them to go to work and beat on people for a daily basis for a job.
Yeah. And personally, I would hope that anybody who goes in there does more than that. I hope the whole facility should just be condemned. But especially, I'm thinking back to what you had said about being at pretty much the lowest points. They had taken you to the hole at one point, and they ignored your pleas for help. And I'm wondering if you could talk, even if briefly.
Yeah, that was Lieutenant Allen. I'm glad that you brought that up. Lieutenant Allen, Corporal Allen, Lieutenant Allen, all of them, involved in Hayes, Lieutenant Lancaster, every single one of these people had a hand in this. But I remember being down there, and I was down there because I wouldn't sign a piece of paper about another Jan 6er in the pod. And they wanted me to sign a paper saying that I was not going to beat him and fight him. And I said, I ain't signing no paper, but that you're going to say that I'm violent. It basically labels me as violent, and it's me agreeing not to fight somebody. I'm not signing that. Well, it's like, okay, well, if you don't sign that, you have to go to solitary confinement and go to the chute. And so finally we got down there, and I beat the case. And after 3 weeks, I was told that I was going back to the pod. And Lieutenant Lancaster came up there and told me to pack up my bags and that you're going back to the pod. And I've been sitting there in solitary for 3 fucking weeks. And I pack up my bags, and I'm there, and it's like 3 p.m. She said, you're leaving at 3 p.m. Well, at 3 p.m., 3:05, she rolls back there and was like, hey, I made a mistake. You're actually not leaving today. And and I said, well, why? And she said, well, there was a mistake on the paperwork. Somebody messed up, and it's going to take about a month to fix. And so once they fix it, then you'll be out of here, okay? Okay. And does one of those little things, and I lost it. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I start kicking the door and everything, because basically I knew what you'd done, because I won't sign your paper and give you and the government what y'all want. you're going to hold me back here in solitary confinement and until I break. And so, and that almost started to happen. They turned my water off on me because of supposedly what the guy was doing next to me. So they turned my water off on me, and I didn't have water for 24 hours. And so I start freaking out. I'm like, these motherfuckers are trying to kill me, which I believe that they were, because I was not going along with their narrative, exposing them in grievances already, getting them written up. Like we were hammering them hard, putting it into court, and turned my water off for 24 hours, thankfully. You know those clear tablets? They had left one of those clear tablets in there with me. And I had access because I had taken a class. I had access to an administrator from the jail. And I sent the administrator a message. I couldn't message my attorney because you're only allowed to send one message to your attorney, and your attorney has to respond back, which I think is fucking completely bogus.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I couldn't message Joe because Joe hadn't messaged me back yet. And so I only had one shot, and I messaged a member of the jail, the administration. I'm like, my water's been off for fucking 24 hours now. Like, I need some help inside of here. I'm in the shoe in this cell, and can you imagine she's getting a message, from a guy in the shoes saying that his water has been off for 24 hours. Sure enough, they come out there, they turn the fucking water on, and she's like, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And my water gets turned back on. I got this entire process documented, and but before they could do that, like, I started telling the officers, like, okay, like, I am suicidal. I am getting to where I'm wanting to kill myself. And I knew that I didn't because I wanted to expose these people in court. But, like, my mind back there, like, I'm starting to hear voices inside of, I'm just, like, my head is, like, going fucking crazy back there. And especially after not getting water and them, I told Lieutenant Allen, like, I'm trying to tell him I'm feeling suicidal. Lieutenant Allen comes in there, Lieutenant Allen, I need to speak to you. He's like, what? I said, I'm feeling suicidal. And he's like, well, hope you don't kill yourself. And he turns around, he smiles and turns around and walks away. And I thought I could tell Lieutenant Allen this because Lieutenant Allen leaned heavily on the fact inside of the pod when he was shucking and jiving with us inside of there that he was a veteran himself. And so I'm thinking, well, from veteran to veteran, if I tell another veteran that I'm feeling suicidal, I'll get some help. And instead of helping me, he laughed, turned around and taunted me and walked away. I had to tell 4 other officers that night I did not get any help. They turned the lights out. Everybody went to sleep. Woke up the next morning. They transferred me from the shoe on one side to the shoe on the next. I'm still feeling suicidal. Like, I haven't done it, but I don't want to have a moment of weakness. I just want to go talk to somebody. Take me to mental health. Let me talk to somebody. And mind you, I have diagnosed PTSD on my medical forms. They know that I am a Marine Corps veteran diagnosed with PTSD. They know these things. I'm just outright denied mental health and medical care. And this has been an ongoing issue, but at this point, like, I'm really feeling suicidal at that time. And so finally, Sawani is working in the hole. Sawani comes up to my cell. Nichols, what you doing in here? And I said, Sawani, and he could see it in my eyes, like, I'm about to break down at this point. I'm having a mental breakdown because I'm like, I haven't been able to talk to my wife and my kids. Like, things are, like, coming up now. I got court dates and stuff coming up. Now I can't prepare for trial. Like, y'all are literally trying to mess my life. And to the point I'm ready to give up. And Sawani can see that. He said, what's wrong, Nichols? I said, Sawani, I am about to kill myself if you don't take me to medical. He drops what he's doing. He said, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm sure. You don't get me out of this cell, you'll come back here in 15 minutes and I'll be fucking dead. And I meant that. And he, boom, calls on the radio, hey, I'm transporting one from the shoe right now to medical. And I'm like, what's going on? He just turned his radio off, And so Wani took me to medical and got me the help that I needed when nobody else would. not even a fucking veteran of the United States Army, took me to get help. An African who loves Jesus Christ and was preaching in there to us, saw my need for help, stopped what he was doing, turned his radio off, risked his entire job, uncuffed me when I was supposed to be cuffed, and walked me to medical as a human being. These are the stories that I want to tell. These are the people that should be commended.
That's a huge slap in the face too. Not just the fact that a veteran turned you down, but I mean, there was a point. I think about a third of the unit at one point were veterans, and one of the things that the jail claimed, at least on paper, was that they had VA reps and stuff like that, which of course never materialized.
Never, ever materialized. And so, all these things we have them on paper, but this is where I think that Doge and everything else comes into play, of where I want to investigate and then indict these people, because I believe they say that they have these people on payroll, but they don't. It's one big slush fund. They say they have them, but they don't have them, and they take the money that's supposed to be for that person, and it goes to line their back pockets. And yes, so when I say I'm going to investigate, I'm going to look into every bit of this, but then we're going to indict.
Well, that's groovy. And to think all this happened because of Poop Boy. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. This might be an unorthodox question, but what did incarceration teach you about human nature, good or bad?
I learned. You think that most humans are inherently good, but that's not true. There are some people that are inherently bad. And I've learned through this process that you need to trust your gut, trust your instincts. But, for a while I advocated that this whole process was messed up for everybody until I got to prison. And when I got to prison and I saw some real monsters in prison, some real predators, some really, really bad people that deserved to be locked up for the rest of their life in solitary confinement and not allowed to see the light of day ever again for the things that they had done and were unremorseful for, and were open that they were going to do it again the next chance that they had got. Those people, they don't deserve basic human rights. But then there are people in there that are doing 25 years for a handful of dope because of how the sentencing guidelines work. And that have totally reformed their lives now that they're not on drugs and they have taken classes and they've got the help they needed. And so you got monsters that will go home in a couple of years, and good men with families that will be in there the rest of their lives. And I think that there is definitely there's a lot that's broken with that system that needs to be looked into and changed. And I believe that it can't be done if you go through the system as a one-off. And the only change that can be taken and put into place is you had people, a massive amount of people like us that went through. And so we know collectively that we could come together and make a change.
You just said something about family. And so let me ask you this. Take us through that Gish galloping. Take us through the remainder of your time. And then upon the journey finishing, I suppose, when you're finally released, I want you to tell me what has been the long-lasting effect that all this has had during, but even today. What's been the lasting impact on your family?
So, to close this out about the journey, so I was sentenced, and then I left. I was sentenced on March the 2nd, and I left the jail on March the 9th, and started my process of going through the prison system. And so when I went to prison, my first day in the BOP, I witnessed an attempted murder. I left DC through Lewisburg, and had to stay in Lewisburg for 8 days. And then during that 8 days, a Muslim was up chanting all night, and he was praying all night. And then in the morning, he woke up, or not woke up, he stayed up all night. When everybody else woke up, they unlocked the doors for rec. We were able to come out of our cells for 4 hours and just stay on the wing there at Lewisburg and then go back into our cells. And so we came out for rec, and next thing you heard was Allah Akbar, and he yelled it, and then you heard a loud thump. And I looked over, and he had taken the fire extinguisher off the wall and cracked this black dude in the back of the head. And he hit him once, you heard the thump, and then he reared back again and boom, hit him again, thump twice. And by this time, blood is gushing everywhere. And I'm thinking that the black dude, if he hits him one more time and he falls down, he's going to kill him. It's going to be it. He's going to just, he's going to kill him. But no, that's not what happens. This dude turns around and gets to whipping his ass and takes that fire extinguisher from him and comes after him with it. And, the kid that was that hit him with the fire extinguisher goes back inside of his cell, shuts the door. Now, we had bars there, and he locks it with his shirt, ties it shut. They're biting each other's fingers trying to get inside there. Like, it's hand-to-hand combat. They're trying to kill each other. And blood is everywhere, and officers are nowhere to be found. Nowhere. And I remember, walking for the door thinking, I got to go get somebody. And one of the other inmates looks at me, another black dude, looks at me and says, where are you going? Don't be saying nothing. Let these two men handle their business. And I realized I was in a different world that I had never been before. I did not belong. I did not want to be in, but I had no choice but to be there. And so at that moment, I realized, you better get tough. Real tough, real fast. You're not in DC no more. You don't have your boys around you. You're on your own now. And you're about to have to get really fucking tough. And I'm thinking, though, that it's still, I got to get tough going through transit. And, because I'm thinking I'm going to the low. I requested the low. Everybody else is going to the low. I think I'm going to the low too, especially I had just beat them on the charges at the DC Appeals Court. So I get to we go through the system. I was 8 days in Lewisburg, and then we fly over to Oklahoma City. I get off of Oklahoma City, and I notice they take me out at the front with everybody on the plane, and I'm like, I'm going first, a single man search. I'm like, something ain't right here. And then they put me in the shoe. And I'm like, why am I in the shoe? And they're like, well, you got labeled as a domestic terrorist. I said, terrorist? I said, I don't have any terrorist enhancement. I said, I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. I served honorably. Terrorist? And he said, sir, what are you here for? Did you steal some ammonium nitrate, or did you make a bomb, or what did you do? I said, I was at the Capitol on January 6th. He was like, oh. He was like, oh, you could tell, it was. He's like, look, dude, every one of y'all coming through here, they're putting through the shoe. It ain't nothing. You're not going to the shoe where you're going. It's just what they're doing to y'all here. And I was like, well, what? That's messed up. He's like, look, you'll find out where you're going down here, but you ain't going to be in the shoe where you're going. And I was like, all right. So I go in there. He's like, last name? I said, Nichols. And you have to tell him your DC, or not your DC, you have to tell him your Fed number. And then he said, yeah, you're going Beaumont, medium. I said, Beaumont, medium? He looked up at me and started smiling. I said, no, sir, I'm supposed to be going to the low over at Seagoville. He said, no, sir. He turned the paper around and showed me. He said, you're going to the medium at Beaumont. I said, fuck. And they said, yeah, somebody hates you. And they turned me around and walked me back out of there, and took me to the chute. And I'm just like, dude, what did I do to deserve this? And it just was what it was. I got down there in the yard, had to have my paperwork in within 30 days, and my paperwork got cleared. And I'll jump to the end. Prison is, especially the medium and the low, that's another like 2 to 3 hour conversation. So I want to save that whole conversation for another time, especially because I'm showing up here to the store with my son. I'm about to have to go in, but I do want to jump to the end. The night that I got out, I want to, circle back around to the rest of the story that I didn't get to finish a few minutes ago. There was Christmas Eve. I had this phone. And I've acquired this cell phone in prison, and I'm able to get on X, and somebody sends me a message, and they're saying, Merry Christmas. Sorry that the government withheld this information from you. And it was a picture of Marcus admitting on Twitter in 2020, I think it was March of 2020 or February of 2020, that he was working for the FBI and had been working for the FBI for years to bring down the Trump administration, and was going to be seeking people out to help him do that. Basically, what he did to me without letting me know what he was doing, he sought out a Trump supporter and Trump supporters and entrapped and infiltrated them. He wound up taking that post down, but not before somebody else screenshotted it and archived it. And the government withheld that from me, knowing that it was there, knowing that he was a confidential human source. And so I've since then gone back and pieced these puzzles together, and put these pieces of the puzzle together, and have figured out that they withheld that information. They knew about it, and did it nefariously. And so a couple of weeks later, I was pardoned, and right before that, I called my attorney, Brad, and Brad also let me know, hey, the government just reached out to me, and they also let me know about another confidential human source that was on the West Terrace that entrapped you that day and goaded you into doing something that you don't even know about. That we're having to make a disclosure about now. Shocking, right? Yeah, and so I'm just like, how terrible is this that it took, the Trump transition team coming into the DOJ and all these things happening and coming to light, and then these disclosures that are slowly having to start being made. And it's like, dude, we went to prison, and I lost time with my wife and kids and years of my life. And now, afterwards, some of the things that, here you go. Go in there and get some stuff that you want. Some of the things that I'm dealing with, I'll let my son get out of the truck because I don't want him hearing this part right now. He's going in there to get something to eat in the store. I can't hold a job right now, or for the first couple months I couldn't. I'm just now getting around to the point to where I can hold a job. It was hard to think clearly. I have nightmares. My wife will be waking me up and I'll be whimpering. I am extremely angry at the federal government, the things that they've done, and that there's no accountability that's been had. I'm mad at the government agents and confidential human sources that entrapped me, that were allowed to do it and weren't held accountable and are going to be allowed to go do it again. And so I'm just very upset that I see these things happening and nothing's been done about it. And the only way that I knew how to move forward that was going to make me feel better at all was that I had to run for Congress and go do something about it. And so that's what I was like, okay, if they're not going to release the video if the congressmen aren't going to do that, like I can't run back to the Congress and run inside of there and protest or riot ever again. I'm never going to get pardoned by the president ever again. We'll never say never, but I would hope that I don't have to go through the process to get pardoned ever again. I'm not putting myself or my family through that, but I will do it the right way. And Cash told me when he's taught us about that grievance process in the D.C. jail that the pen is mightier than the sword. And so I'm like, well, why not me? And why don't I go back to D.C. and peel back the veil on everything? And I can't be bought. I don't want to be bought. I like the life that I live. I don't want to be a politician forever. I want to go up there for 2 years and disrupt your entire system and expose everything corrupt that you're doing, bring the right person in, and then go home and enjoy the rest of my life. And so that's really my plan. It's not a long-term plan to be in D.C. It's not a long-term plan. I don't want to do that. Like, I don't even want to run for Congress now. And I told the people in Nash, Texas last week to listen to me, I don't want to do this. I have to do this. I must do this. And so, there's guys, like if I didn't have the support system that I have with my wife and my kids and my parents and my in-laws, then I would be in a lot of trouble right now. I'd be in some extreme trouble. And I know that there's a lot of people that don't have that support system. I look at what they're doing to people like Bart right now, who's going to die any hour, any day. And no family by his side. Family abandoned him because of what the country portrayed him as, and denied him chemotherapy, denied him the treatment. And there is an argument to be had that had he had his treatment, he might not be dying right now, and he might live. But he's not going to get that because he was denied that. And so these are the people that I'm going to go fight for, the people that have no voice and that can't speak for themselves in this system, not just in the prison system and the justice system, but in life in general. I see where I'm at locally, the poverty level is extremely high, way high. The median income average, well below the national average. And so I wear this hat around that says Make East Texas Great Again, because that's what I'm running on. And they're like, well, East Texas is great, Ryan. You can't say, when was it not? And I said, well, look at the poverty level. Look at this. Look at that. Look at your congressman right now, Nathaniel Moran, and he's voting for the Constitution only 62% of the time. 38% of the time he's voting against the Constitution. And so when I see these things, I say this is not Louis Gohmert. If Louis Gohmert was still in office, I wouldn't be running right now. He came into the jail and he came and saw us. That was my congressman. Nathaniel Moran, who replaced him, who hasn't reached out to me once, who doesn't respond to people, this is not a man of the people. We don't want him, and so I'm going to run against him. Even if I lose, I plan on holding him accountable. And I've already started seeing that happen. He's changed his social media manager. He's changed people within his office. He's changed the way that he's done things so far. And I'm going to keep pressing him harder and harder until either I replace him in office or he changes the way that he does things completely. And that's really the name of the game right there.
Well, excellent. I hope if you do get in there, I hope you shake things up. I hope you work to not just declassify, but release the things that were withheld from us. And hopefully, with the right guidance, these kinds of psyops, honeypots will cease to exist. But if they do happen again, I hope that we have a representative who will actually reach out to their constituents and actually fight for them instead of ignoring them. And
100%. And that's what I want to do. And it's 2025. Like, there's too many tools available today for you to be able to talk to your constituents and find out what do they want, what do they need, and fix those issues. It's not being done here, and so that's why I'm stepping in to do it. But as I told somebody else, I'm not a politician. I don't want to do this long term. Go find the right person that wants to do it long term, or find the person that wants to do it the next 2 years after me. But yes, I do want to get in there. I do want to declassify everything related to January 6th, and really anything that I can that the people deserve to know about. And when I say that I want to peel back the veil and it's like the Wizard of Oz. I want to know, and I want to know myself, and everybody else wants to know who's the man behind the curtain. So I'm going to peel it back, and we're going to find out who is the man behind the curtain on everything. And that's what I told you before, and I still say it, Tim. I'm going to need your help. I saved my first interview, podcast style, long format style for you. And because I've seen the work that you've done, I've watched your character when I was inside of the DC jail. I've seen what you've done with Patriot Freedom Project. What Cynthia has done. We appreciate everything. My family, y'all took care of my wife and kids while I was inside of jail and prison. I watched you take care of countless other people as well. And so you have my support. You have my loyalty. You have my respect. And I know there were times in there where I questioned and I stayed middle of the road because I wanted to see who was who and what was going on. But there was a time when I didn't have to stay middle of the road with you anymore, and I took a hard line for you inside of there and even went to the hole over that. And I know we'll get to that later and talk about those things later, because I'm still trying to feel out for not you, but what's going on with some of these other guys and what they're doing out on the outside. I without saying any names, I'm sure that you can see already guys that are running and playing back into these PSYOP roles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is crazy. Oh, this is completely crazy right here. And, I look forward to talking with you about that in a later time, but I appreciate everything you've done up until this point to help me.
100%. And I thank you for giving me your time and talking about all this, because it's extremely important. And, I'll just say this: Ryan Nichols, father and husband, veteran, political prisoner, and now candidate for national office. Thank you for being with me, and I will close with this. Big O's in the hole!
Big O's getting naked! Yeah, that was funny. Hey, thank you, brother. I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. And it was a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to getting to know y'all more.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, brother. I'll talk to you again later, Tim.
You got it.